Yo!
Hello.
Sunday morning. Sunday Live with Dave Friedman.
What's going on, people?
Check it out. Me and Dave have the exact same room aesthetics going with the hardwood floor and the red and the heads and checkerboard cabinet. It's pretty cool. I like your zone there. That's good. You get like some natural light. So are you going to do some of your, you do your Tone Talk show? Are you going to do some?
Yeah, I do it all from here. I did the last one from here. So,
looks good.
Yeah, there's a couple of windows to the right, to my right, but that kind of let light in. That I have a workbench over in the corner.
That's nice.
So it's pretty cool. It's like the little man cave workshop.
Yeah, you look healthier than me. I look like white, like a ghost, and you look like you got.
I look too red though because I don't have proper lighting.
Well, what's up, people? Nice to be joined here by Dave, my good friend and old pal, and we've been doing stuff together since the '90s. Dave's done my racks, and I don't know. I mean, it's '90s, and I was the owner of the second Marsha amp.
So, yeah, you were, weren't you?
Early Friedman days. I'd like to say that today, in honor of Dave being here, I've got the dude mug going and a little bit of Glenlivet in my coffee this morning because Dave insisted.
Because it's Sunday.
Dave insisted we have a drink, and so.
Well, it's Sunday, and it is seems like the drinking is coming out more in everyone with all of this lockdown.
If that's your, if that's
Justin Derrico said to me the other day, he goes, "Yeah, man." He was talking to me about doing something for him. Yeah, everything's good, man. Everything's fine, and but I just can't stop drinking.
God,
it's at 3 o'clock. It seems like I've kind of like slacked off.
That guy's still ripping on guitar. He needs to drink a little more and slow him down a little bit. Make him a little more sloppy. I just saw some video he put up the other day. It's like, geez, dude, it's ridiculous on guitar.
I had champagne today.
So Dave's got the
Sunday morning mimosa.
Yeah, Sunday morning mimosa. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Let's say hi to some of these folks in the chat here. Say like Chris a long time ago, he did up in the top super chat thing. He says, "Thanks for doing this, Pete and Dave. I'm building a Princeton reverb amp and was wondering what parts of the amp have a huge impact on the tone. What brands and parts do you recommend?"
Ooh. I mean, I think with sometimes with clean amps, I think there's a little less interaction in tone, or they're a little harder to hear the changes and things. So, I mean, it's a good question. Use good quality transformers. I mean, there's all sorts of. I mean, if you're building a kit, it might already have like Haymore transformers or something. Depends on where you get it from. And as far as that's a good question for clean.
Like the distortion tends to blow up the differences more, right?
Yeah, they blow up the differences more. What would I use for clean? Actually, a Mallory cap sound pretty nice for clean stuff. So do certain orange drop caps sound okay for clean stuff? Pete's sitting there adjusting his mood lighting.
Changing my lights. Well, you answer.
So if you're buying a kit, what comes with your kit and what's in it, and it might be pretty good already.
Yeah, generally, right? Like if it's a hand-wired kit from Mojo or something, then
yeah, I mean, they're good stuff, good parts.
Oh, I don't know that that's better. What I just did. That looks.
You got too much light on your face,
which is almost none. My lights are all the way down. Maybe it's the screen.
That's probably better.
It's interesting. Like I got a little Princeton reissue here from, it's just that 68 Princeton reissue. And it sounds pretty damn good. Like it's got all the wrong stuff. Like it's, it doesn't have the bright cap because they've tried to make them more friendly with pedals, and it's got a Celestion in it. And I don't know. It sounds nice,
Yeah, I worked on that. Yeah, it sounds good.
I think your point is good, like that with distortion and it just like that's what I always find. Like, for instance, with impulse responses, let's take that for example. Try and compare different IRs or different speakers for that matter, right? In the real world, but IRs is just a quick and easy way. When you go back and forth between the different ones on clean sounds, it's like it's a little different here, a little different there and stuff. But as soon as you add distortion to the mix, like put an overdrive pedal in front of the amp, it's like, oh, there's the differences because all the harmonics and
yeah, no, absolutely. Though the funny thing is often I've caught myself doing this over the years. Often the parts differences, some of the parts that you think are making a big difference and you're trying and listening. If you build 2 amps with totally different parts and put them with an amp switcher and then dial them in to sound the same, not necessarily exactly the same settings, but dial them in to sound the same. The fact of the matter is they wind up sounding the same. Regardless of the, you just turn the knobs differently to make them sound right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, it makes a difference, but most good quality parts sound decent.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's more about the circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like people spend a lot of time like swapping tubes in and out, and then you can try different caps and it's subtle stuff, really, isn't it? Compared to something big like changing the speaker.
Yeah, but the funny thing, when you see that, even if like say tubes, for instance, so say you put a preamp tube you don't like in one amp, and then the ones you like in another amp, they're identical amps. You put them on an amp switcher and you switch back and forth and turn the knobs until it sounds the same. Yeah, and then you're like, really? Does it really sound much different?
Not that, yeah.
Not really. It's interesting. It's an interesting.
And Dave and I have talked about making videos about this, like taking 2 amps, put them beside one another. Like for instance, taking your old 68 plexi and then maybe a new 1987X that's had a couple little tweaks to the circuit or whatever and then going back and forth on an amp switcher and listening, because it's kind of interesting how close. And I've seen
if you have a set of ears, you can dial it in to be sort of the same.
Sort of the same, yeah. A couple more things. Somebody wants to know if you've ever got, who is it? Tantrumgasm wants to know if you've ever been shocked really bad by an amp.
Yeah, that's why my hair's white.
You've had
of course, everyone gets shocked, and the more you do this, the more careless you get.
The more you do it.
About that on the John Sir one that we did on Tone Talk.
Oh yeah.
Remember he was telling him about his necklace that he was wearing?
Oh yeah, and then he went down
fraternity god or something, and he dipped over an amp and blew the balls off the necklace and blew him across the room.
Oh yeah. The necklace had balls on it or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's crazy.
Okay. Yeah, it happens. And you do as you go on and you get more confident and you're doing stuff and you're just like, yeah, I can change that part while the amp's on.
Right.
And going.
And you're like, go.
And occasionally screw up and touch something you shouldn't have. And
right.
But what I find hurts more than the actual shock is your recoil from the actual amplifier. So you take your arms and you naturally just like yank them back like that.
Uh-huh.
And that yanking back, you do it so hard and so fast that you're like, your shoulders, you're like, oh God, I think I hurt myself more doing that.
Gnarly. A couple others in the super chat here. I'm trying to get to as many of these as possible. We'll go fast. Question for Dave. What album tone did Eddie's original super lead plexi remind you of when you first got finished with it? Or did you hear him playing through it? So like when you plugged into that amp and played through it, is it like, oh yeah, that sounds like...
Yeah, all of them.
I remember playing it in your studio.
All of them.
You let me play through it while you kind of listen to it.
You played Unchained, and I think, and it just kind of like, yeah, that's it.
It's truth be told, right? He had you do a bunch of stuff, but it sounded good before and it sounded good after.
Yeah.
Like not do a bunch of stuff we're not trying to create. All you did was really just restore, but it had the when I first saw it, it had the Teflon wire from the fellow over here. Everyone's working on it, and then you put in all old wire and like you didn't you like you replaced all the wire with
took vintage wire out of another vintage plexi.
Right. Yeah.
We literally gutted it of all the wire and then wound up putting it in the in the main head,
which maybe
it's kind of crazy, but it sounded good in the end. I'm not saying it didn't, and then I kind of set it up like some of my hypotheses about how he used to set things up, with the jacking up of the bias and having it at 90 volts and about 50 mils and this and that, and and that was a big thing.
I'm taking some photos here. Just I don't want to miss the top chats. There's another one here. Guy says it's the Hoppo. What's up, dude? He says, question for Dave: can you dispel any myths, if there are any, about amp cab ohm mismatch? What can and can't be done safely? Great question.
Man, you can pretty much do anything. To be honest, I mean, it's not going to hurt the amp. I wouldn't go crazy with the mismatch. Like, if it's a 2 ohm amp, I wouldn't use a 16 ohm cabinet. Bad idea. You are going to cause arcing and stuff in your amp.
Okay, so don't go crazy. 2 into a 4 ohm load.
But like one off, you're not hurting the amp.
What about the other way? 4
in
ohm.
either direction, you're not hurting the amp.
Okay, so like a one-way mismatch is safe.
Yeah, it's fine.
Pretty much. What about
not as fragile as you think?
What about like 4 ohms into 16 ohms?
That's a little. I wouldn't do too much. I would only do one off.
One-way mismatch.
Routinely, actually, personally on Marshalls, I love setting a Marshall on 8 going into a 16 ohm cab.
Right, that can be a nice.
I think it actually is a little chewier in the mid range. It's a little cooler, actually.
Yeah, opens up the top end a little bit. That's the same thing as like when
it doesn't really open the top end. It actually accentuates the mid range, sort of.
All right, yeah.
Kind of gives it a little chewier, growlier thing in the mids, a little more compression, actually. With a cabinet, that is.
A couple more. You guys, Rock says the Recording Lounge. What are some of the ways to reduce ghosting or intermodulation distortion from a Marshall Super Lead Plexi?
Oh man, I mean,
filtering.
Well, filtering is the thing that will fix it, but do you want to fix that?
Fine line.
Personally, I love that. I think that's what makes it a Marshall. I mean, a little of that, harmonic overtones and stuff. I mean, I think that's what makes it interesting. I mean, original JTM 45s and things like that, those are pretty low filtered amps. Original Vox amps are really low filtered. And man, there's something about that though.
It's interesting on the and
there's two things involved in this though. There's cone cry also.
Right.
So cone cry can be a whole nother problem. And once you kind of get hypersensitized towards that, you'll start noticing it.
That's worse to me. But ghosting is, on the Revival Drive pedal, just before this, actually, it's okay. This won't disappear. I got another super chat here I'm going to get to. But on the Revival Drive pedal, one of the things that's so unique about that pedal from Origin Effects is it's got this ghosting control where they've been able to kind of emulate the ghosting effect. And it's really cool. It's like, oh, that's what it is. I mean, I know what it is, but to be able to dial it in on a pedal and then listen to chords and then listen to single notes and go, oh, okay. And it's one of the things that's magic about that pedal. It makes it sound like no other distortion pedal that I've tried. So accurate to the amp, where it's like, oh, like when you're playing dyads or chords, the fatness it gives to is kind of incredible,
Yeah, it's cool.
And so that's
I think that's like makes amps interesting. I don't think you want to take that out entirely because that's what the amp was going to do. I mean, you have to make sure the filter caps are good.
Well, that's the other thing, right?
I mean, if the filter caps are bad, maybe it's causing ghosting. So you might need fresh filter caps in the amp. You But I'm a firm believer of not upping them. If you use the stock values, use what was originally intended if you want the stock sound. Now we can go modifying and changing it, but it's changed the whole vibe of the amp.
Yep.
Entirely.
I mean, if you go from if you've got a 66 or 67 Marshall spec or something, you want to go to the 70 spec, that's one thing. It's like, okay, but it is going to change the thing, but that's not so bad. I mean, it's something you can experiment with, right? But going overboard with too much filtering seems to. But anyway, that's what
it starts sucking the. I mean, it tightens it up, but it starts sucking the mid range out of things to me. And for a Marshall, that's bad. And it sounds scooped. I mean, there was times back. John Sir used to do this too. There was times that he back in the Bradshaw days that they were putting these really big filter caps in Marshalls. Yeah, no.
Well, it's a sound. I mean, I think I know what he was trying to do, like going for a certain sound and stuff. But it's like it's a certain player might like it because there's lots of amps.
It sort of just sucks all the life out of it for me. It doesn't have any life left.
Well, it's not a vintage Marshall anymore, is it? It's a different sound.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
It's a totally different thing. And a lot of amps probably have pretty stiff. Like, what is it like when it comes to diesels and stuff like that? Are they pretty stiff when it comes to the filtering?
No, not overly. No, actually.
No. What's a modern amp that has a lot of that you've seen that like?
I mean, a Soldano has a lot of filtering.
Okay.
Generally speaking, so it's relatively stiff in character.
And it can have a stiffer sort of feel. But in an amp, I guess that's got a ton of preamp gain and you're trying to get all the tone out of the preamp. Maybe it becomes a different thing entirely. You get all this preamp. Like what about a 5150 or something? Are they
not excessively, no.
Between that
pretty much Marshall values with the main filter caps being just a little bit bigger.
But when you say Marshall values, do you like on something like a 5150, is it like set? Because I know there's a big difference between like the 67, 68 Marshalls and even a 70, right? Like
I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's the first filtering stage, and in a Marshall, it's generally 2 caps in series, 200 UF caps in series. It winds up being a value of 50 UF. The second stage in a vintage, like a vintage 12 series plexi, had 233 UF caps in series. So it was like 16, so it was low. Later, they changed that to be the same value as the first stage, which winds up being 50 after you series them together. So in a lot of modern amps, the very first stage, instead of being 50, they use 220 microfarad caps, so it gives you a value of basically 100. So it's a little stiffer on the main filter.
Now, these differences that you just laid out
are not massive.
But to me, is the difference between, I know there's probably other things that you can list, but those are the big ones that I notice when I play a 70 Super Lead or 71 compared to a 68.
Yeah, so that second filter stage was massive. That one will really, it's all about the touch at that point. It's like, is it squishier or stiffer?
When people talk about a 68 versus a 72 Marshall, you know?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, though. I mean, you can't just generalize it because there's also so many different little specs that they use based on maybe what parts were in stock.
The squishy,
you know. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many different specs, though. I mean, you can't just characterize, oh, the 68 sounds this way. Well, which 68 spec?
Yeah.
There's like 5 or 6 of them. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, let's grab a couple of these more super chats. And then we gotta get to a bunch of the other ones too. We'll try and go faster, guys. The My High Gain sorry, I think I feel the scotch kicking in. Fizz and sprinkles.
Already? What, do you have 2 sips of it?
I don't know. I haven't had any food yet. You know how that goes. Okay, Fizz and Sprinkles.
Oh, this could be fun.
He's up in Canada and he says, my high gain Axe Effects 3 tones sound great one day. And the next day the tone sounds like it's being choked. The feel of the amp is harder to play. Power issue, voltage regulator or conditioner. On an Axe Effects, it's a computer. It's either on or off.
Yeah, it's none of that. None of that at all. It's your ears.
It's your ears and how you feel.
Humidity in your room. Your studio monitors and the humidity of the paper cones.
Right.
Or however you're listening. It makes more of a difference. Sometimes you just like stuff just sounds like crap one day. You know, like
yeah.
You have to take a break from it, walk away, and then come back the next day, and you're like, "Oh, it's fine." Sometimes your ears, I don't know. Are your sinuses a little clogged today? How do your ears sound? I don't know.
It's a funny thing. I mean, it's like with things like tempos. I had to learn like when you play live in a band and you do certain things to a click, or there's maybe the band's running tracks or something, or and you play to a click, and that's what really when you go from gig to gig, and it's like, does this feel really slow tonight to you guys? And it's like, wait a minute, that's impossible. We're playing to a set click every night.
Exactly. You're
like, oh, it's a great.
So my head's slow.
It's a wake up call. Like, oh, my perspective is totally skewed by. I just missed a super chat, and I'm sorry. I'm going to find it so whoever you were, it's one of the green ones.
There's one from Nick.
Okay.
That says, Dave, you said you made a new circuit for the Jake amp. Could you possibly shed some light on what that looks like? Differences from a BE.
Question.
What is it different? It's a different circuit, meaning it kind of started more with an 800-ish sort of circuit, and then I made it higher gain.
This is the Jake E. Lee amp.
Yeah.
For those that.
Yeah. And I made it higher gain, so it's got a real muscular, very muscular. When you smack it, it really kind of, you feel it in your chest. It really kind of gives you this to it, and it's bright, and it's got that sizzly, bright, goodness to it. So it's just a little different circuit. It's a little less plexi sounding, a little more boosted 800 sounding, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, because that's what he used. So that type of
exactly, and that's why we started there. And there is a mode on it that is mostly, with my own take on it, an 800-ish kind of sound, the lower gain.
A little more high gain 80s and a little less plexi.
Mm-hmm. But then the clean channel is like the plexi, like sort of out of the BE Deluxe amp, where if it's on 10, it's going to give you AC/DC basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alex says, what are your favorite effects units, vintage or modern, for a rock rig that covers with chorus, pitch, multiple delays, reverb? Like vintage or modern, what are your favorite effects units? Pitch, delay, reverb, chorus.
Pitch. Okay, all-time favorite for pitch probably would be an Eventide H3000. And not anything else. Like not the Eventide Eclipse, not the Eventide Pedal, not anything. There's something about the 3000 that just, you turn it on and you're just like, God, that sounds amazing. Let's see, for
as a thing, right?
Chorus. Oh boy. Pedal choruses, depending on what kind of chorus you're looking for. An old Boss CE2 is amazing for a basic, the originators of chorus, so to speak, Boss, And also for wobbly, though, Boss CE1. Favorites by far. I love both of those. Now, if you're talking rack chorus, well, the two big ones that were in, like, say, the 80s were Tri-Stereo Chorus or TC1210.
Mm-hmm.
All these flavors are great, but totally different, but amazing. Delays, all-time favorite delays. Lexicon PCM42, maybe hands down the best. Just unbelievable juicy goodness that you just can't describe. 3-dimensional, deep sounding, almost sounds like there's reverb on with the delay, but there's not. It just has this dimension to it. SDE 3000, great sounding delay from Roland. Slightly different, but I mean, there's other ones from that era that were great also.
Those are the big ones, though.
Yamaha D1500s were great.
What about the Korg?
The Korg was great for that U2 type thing. So the modulated delay in front of a Vox or something that's amazing. SDD 3000.
What are those like in a rack? Like maybe post or what?
They're not great posts. I mean, honestly, they're best suited. I mean, they're fine posts. They sound good, but mostly people use those in front and
preamp, right?
Yeah, you can use it as a boosting the front of the Vox, which is a great tone. Like it just kind of there's some level switches on it for in and out, and you can just boost it a little bit into the front. Yeah. Total edge thing.
I'm gonna try and remember another top chat here. They're coming fast, so it's
reverb,
yeah.
Reverb. I see the chat. So reverb.
PCM.
PCM 70, all-time favorite. SRV 2000 was also cool from Roland. And we could do a whole nother topic on new stuff. That's my favorite. But that's all-time favorites of stuff.
Good stuff. Somebody was asking about in the super chat about the Comet Concord mod. You did a mod on my Concord, which is sitting right back there, actually. And because it had this thing where when I turned it up really loud, single notes sounded super fat, but it was almost too much maybe for some things. And the more dirty it got, it would collapse a little bit. And it was just pushing a lot of low end through the front end. So it's a simple bass cap thing, right? And they were asking, can you do it on a Comet 60 as well? I'm sure, right?
If the circuit's the same, yeah, sure. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's basically, in that it was a lower value capacitor, so it passed less bass, so it didn't get this kind of blocking sort of distortion that would happen before.
It's an interesting thing, the balance of low end pushing through the front end of how much low end you can push through the preamp when it's getting dirtier and dirtier. And shaving off that, which is a big part of like we've been talking about that Jose amp recently and all that. There's like no bass in the front end,
none, but there's plenty of bass.
Yeah,
it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, add more distortion. Like it's almost like the more distortion you pile on in the preamp, the less bass has to be there, and it still sounds full. But if it's a clean sound, it sounds super thin. If you don't have
well, kind of think about what you do in recording when you high pass filter and stuff and on stuff sometimes massively. To make it sit in a mix right and stuff.
Well, and also just with a cleaner sound, you can get away with because you're not compressing the crap out of it, like through limiting and compressing and distortion, and then it's just going like this, right? Like you filter out some of that low. Think about bass guitar. Most bass guitar pedals and things that try and emulate the old split rigs of the past where it was Chris Squire or like Doug Pinnick, they keep the low end clean. They use it. They go so far as to use a crossover of some sort to completely, shelve out all the low end out of the and keep the low end clean. Right.
Right. Exactly. Adam Cave Project.
Yeah. He says,
good morning, Dave. What speaker cab combo or combos of speakers do you prefer for an all-around option? Or do you pick cabs specifically for an amp type? Do you build boards for amateurs too? Well, let's do the last one first. Yeah, of course. I build all sorts of boards for all sorts of people. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're interested in having a board built, email me at racksystems@yahoo.com. Be happy to build one for you. As far as speakers, well, I like Celestions. So what are my options here? Celestions. There's lots of Celestions though, of course. I mean, a Greenback is of course a favorite speaker. I know Pete loves Greenbacks. Depending on the kind of music you're playing, I mean, we chose in our cabinets to do a combo of vintage 30s and Greenbacks. It's an interesting combo. It does work because vintage 30 is brash and sort of, kind of high mid, really punchy, unforgiving sort of thing. And a lot of times that works great for metal and heavy kind of stuff, but it doesn't work for cleaner stuff or in between stuff where the Greenbacks do. So when you combine the two, which is what I originally got from Jerry Cantrell, I did a rig for him back in the dirt era. And at that time, he was using a Bogner preamp and a power amp. And we figured out, because we had one cabinet with greenbacks and one cabinet with vintage 30s in the room. Mm. And we figured out that we love the combination of the two. So one cab was all greenbacks, one cab was all vintage 30s. So later, even in his rig now, his heavier amp, he uses 2 amps simultaneously, and his heavier sounding amp uses the vintage 30s, and the dialed back gain wise amp uses the greenbacks.
So that was how you got that idea originally?
Yeah.
From Jerry, working with Jerry. That's cool.
And I reintroduced it. Reintroduced it to him because I reminded him when I went to do his rigs again for, many years in between. So I did a new rig for him when they first came out with their first return record, Black Gives Way to Blue. Mm. And I reintroduced that. It's been lost, and he loves how that works. And it's a nice thing also for the sound guy up front. You know, he's got a heavier sounding amp, and he's got a less gainy amp and 2 different speakers, so they blend nicely.
Well, we tried it in my cabinet for the PT15, and it works great, and that's what we went with. Yeah. But you were really the first one I saw that was doing it in your own cabs and stuff. I mean, I guess blending speakers goes way back. I mean, people were doing patterns and all that, and talking about greenbacks but like I remember my buddy Al back in the 80s who used a Marshall cab, checkerboard cab, and he was blending H's and M's. And this is 86 or 87, and he loved it.
Yeah,
like, great back then. So that's maybe the first time I ever saw somebody do that. Was 87 or 86 or so. But
and also, you know, sometimes it's cab dependent.
Yeah.
Like in certain cab designs, sometimes what you think, you know, you go, oh, let me put greenbacks in this. Let's see what it sounds like. You listen to it. You're like, nah, not feeling it. Like I have some 212 cabinets that I specifically put vintage 30s in the particular cabinet because I feel in the end, it's a better sounding cabinet with those speakers in it.
And how do you feel about, like, one thing I've noticed about blending speakers in cabinets, a horizontal 212 is not a great cabinet across the board. Pretty much, I can say this in my experience. It's not great for blending speakers because you end up with one speaker here and one speaker here, and if they're a different efficiency, you always hear the one being dominant, whichever the louder one is. But if your cabinet is a 412, and what you're trying to do is, like, if you put the V30s in the bottom, they're louder than the greenbacks. They're more efficient. But the greenbacks in the top have this great overall smooth, because you don't, you know, a 412, it's like you don't hear them as you, I don't know. There's something about the way the speakers are configured.
That was the idea. That's why we put the greenbacks in the top.
Because they're not as loud.
That's what you're going to hear ear-wise. So, you know, these vintage 30s that are really kind of poking at you, you're not going to get that ear fatigue.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So that was the idea, and it worked really well. I mean, you used some of our cabinets in the shop before, and just like, it sounds good.
Yeah, it just works. I mean, we tried it in the okay, so I tried blending speakers in the PT 212 that was for the 100 watt, so it's a horizontal, and I didn't like any of the blends really. They sound okay, but it's like, then we tried 2 H75s, and it was greenbacks, and it was like, oh, there it is. That sounds great. And pretty much every time I blend speakers in it, because I got a few of those cabs, like different ones, never works. But in the PT15, it's more this arrangement, you know, where they're split offset, like it's like a baby 412, but it's a 212, but with the speakers, like, you know, whatever, horizontal, diagonal, whatever, and that works. That's why we went.
There you go.
It sounded great in my. So, okay. Somebody was asking about Abraxas. I can't remember exactly how they spelled the name. I think Brax something or other was asking about in the super chat. Steve Stevens had you mod a Randall module for the original Randall preamp, the modular preamp, and he was wondering, would you ever do that again? You did some for me too.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, to be honest, what I actually did on which module, I don't remember at this point.
For Steve.
But I've modded many a module to be you know, different circuits. So yeah, they're totally moddable, and you can make them sound cool.
You did one or two of mine, and they're ripping.
Like, yeah, they sound great. I mean, it's good. I mean, those were good. Those amps sounded good, man. When you modded them up, and they were cool.
Yeah,
it's funny. I have a few. I think I'm gonna sell some stuff off soon in a reverb store, and I think I have maybe a couple Randall amps that'll go really cheap, the 3-channel ones. I think one is a Lynch box, which was a Lynch thing for a while, and the other one is just a regular old one. I'm going to sell them off pretty cheap, I think.
If anybody wants them.
Somebody like really cheap. Like, please take them.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just taking up space. I have so much stuff, people, man. Pete knows there's so much shit.
Yeah. So we've been talking about that. Like,
there is just so much stuff. It's stupid.
Should we just, I mean, we could do it on Reverb, but also for folks in LA. It's like we batted around the idea for years about doing the Bonamassa thing and renting out a room at like one of the spaces in the valley, like one of the rehearsal spaces, and doing like maybe you, me, and Oliver Lieber or a few of our friends getting together and having a sale one day. And just like, so everybody could come by and we'll have a parking lot party and barbecue and sell gear. Because we end up, you know, like everybody out there, you end up with stuff. It's just like, I think it's
stuff over the years, and you're just like, do I really need this? You know, you're like looking at it going, I haven't used it for
3 years, 5 years,
or more, or 10. Yeah, and it's like you're just collecting dust. I go, do I really? Come on.
And it could be great for someone else to make use of.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not good. It's just like I just don't use it. I don't need it.
Yep.
You know.
Couple
the
more
stuff behind me. I need. I keep that.
A couple more, Dave. What are the best or most important? This is the recording lounge. Both are most important places to modify brightness in a high gain amp circuit. Favorite bright cap values on a JMP versus a JCM.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of spots to modify that. I mean, traditional bright caps are across the volume, so they don't work if the volume's on 10. They only work if they're down some. Now, a vintage 4-input style amp, generally speaking, on the treble channel, had a very aggressive bright cap. And that pretty much only sounds good from between 7 to 10 on the volume knob. If you get it down to 5, it just sounds like thin, anemic, bright. If you get it lower than that, forget it. It's unusable. So it's nice to have a switch for that stuff. I mean, that cap is cool, but again, you can only use it. You can only use it from 7 to 10 on the volume. You know.
So you put a cap on my 71 that you mentioned is kind of it's a real subtle cap, and it's more like what would have come on a JTM 45.
Yes, correct. You can use like 100 picofarad cap, which is a very small cap, which is what would have come on a JTM 45, and that pretty much just keeps the high end constant.
Makes the amp more
usable. Any other frequencies, so it's just the top. So if it gets a little bit dull when you turn it down, it just has a little sparkle still.
This is a huge thing, like for those that haven't tried messing with bright caps on old Marshalls, but the value of that cap, to me, it changes the usable tones and the overall character of the entire amp. Once again, because you're blowing up the sound into distortion with a Marshall.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, you know, accentuating certain frequencies. So the big values are accentuating way into the mid-range, you know. The small values are just the top end, and then there's places in between. But it depends on what kind of amp we're talking. You know, like he mentioned an 800. An 800 had a reasonably aggressive bright cap. It was a 001. The vintage JMP huge bright cap I was talking about is a 0047. So considerably bigger. The 001 works really well in a JCM, I think. But then again, how are you going to use the JCM? That's the question. So if you're going to use JCM, doesn't have that much gain. If you're going to use it, and I would never use JCM gain on 10. Between like 8 and 10, it's still the same amount of gain. It's just now you're getting the bright cap a little bit. So it's kind of tightening up the bottom end, giving it a little, you know, top end attack. and it just works really well.
So that slightly flubby JCM 800 thing, when people crank the gain, can be mitigated by turning that down to 8.
Yeah, 7 to 10, somewhere in there, you know. And it still kind of is the same amount of gain. Now it just gives you this little snarly thing, and it kind of cleans up the low end a bit.
And then if you want a nice, like, if you're going for metal or 80s metal or whatever, you can hit it with like a OD1 or something that even lops off a little more low end into the front end, and there's that tone, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Or a tube screamer or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, John up in the super chat there, and then after this, I'm going to do a few that weren't super chat because I don't want to leave all you guys out. He says he just purchased a Marshall Super 100 Jimi Hendrix JH limited edition head, cool head, on Reverb, and he hasn't received it yet. Any thoughts on this amp? Does this amp need vintage NOS KT66 tubes? I mean, it probably came with new ones, right? And that's what it was designed around, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, how much are those going to cost you? And
crazy money, right?
I would think that it's not going to. I wouldn't invest that in a reissue amp. If it was a vintage original, maybe. But I don't think so. I mean, it's a cool amp. I mean, it's a 10 series. I've worked on one once.
So what's the deal with that? Is it more the 10?
Kind of like a 100-watt JTM 45-ish sort of thing. Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. So it's, you know, big in the low end, kind of mushy and, you know, beautiful clean sound, you know. If you drive it, you're going to turn the bass off probably. Turn the treble and presence and everything else on 10.
Basically a super loud Fender Bassman.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of what that is.
So they were probably just like JTM 45, and then some players were like,
right with a Strat. Killer with a Strat.
Killer with a Strat, yeah.
Yeah, you know, think of that big fat bloomy low end, you know, just breaking up a little bit with a vintage Strat. Oh man, yeah, that's good.
Get it with a fuzz face if you want some.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That'd be awesome.
What's the best KT66 that you found out there, like the current one, if they need to be replaced?
Well, let's see. I think only 2 people make them now. So there's Chinese KT66s and
EH or something, right?
I think there's an EH KT66. I've used both. They both seem to work. I mean, the Chinese one sounded good. I don't know how the reliability is or how robust they are. Probably, I guess that the EH is maybe a little bit superior for ruggedness.
Project Guitar says, "Hi Pete and Dave. Question: any way to see if my 2 amps are on the same phase, like or are in phase? I mean, my way to do that is just sit in the middle and listen to sound. Like if the sound almost disappears when you're in the center, right?
What are your 2 amps?
You'll know. Yeah, what are the 2 amps? You know? Yeah. But generally speaking, it sounds super weird when you're in the middle, and it make you almost like dizzy. Like if you put them at the exact, they got to be the same volume. Put your head, go back and forth between the speaker cabs like this, and right when you get in the middle, if all the low end drops out, it sounds super weird. They're out of phase, which is a crapshoot. It's 50% of the time. I mean, if you use a old AC30 and a twin together, or a Marshall and whatever they are, you kind of pretty much have to have an AB box that's got a phase flip switch on it if you're using 2 amps.
Yeah, there's a good AB box with a phase flip. It's the Radial Twin City
twin bone
box. It's small, powered on 9 volts. It's blue and black. I know that.
Yeah.
Tone Bone Twin City something. They always had the weirdest names. I don't understand.
I thought it was called the Twin Bones or something. But
well, what I'm thinking of is it's blue in character, 9 volt DC, and it's it works really well. I mean, even the buffer sounds good. Everything's in it. It just works. It's small. It works. It's silent, and phase and ground lift on it. Best little box. That's what I would recommend for the the buffer. If you need a AV box like that. Full Tone also makes another one that's really good too.
Yeah, you need an ISO transformer too for the second amp, or you're gonna.
Well, that's in there, built in to the box.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, you need something that's got that, and the Radial has it on it. So with that unit, you'd be good to go. There's a few others out there. What about the Lehali or whatever they're called? Those ones from
let's
have them, right?
That's cool. I always find the switch a little weird on those.
Oh yeah, the big round.
You can't, when you engage the switch, you got to take your foot off of it for it to go back. Like you can't stomp on it and you have to lift your foot off.
That's
in order for it to switch, which I find is a little weird. I mean, they work. I prefer the radial for that. Sam
was up there in that super chat. Thanks, you guys, for all you guys for doing that. He says he saw the amazing Steve Vai and Jose Mod vid, which you were a big part of, Dave. He says that he has a 78 JMP 50 watt combo. Could that be modded to sound close to the Marshall in the video?
It could be. Generally speaking, the 78 era 50 watts. Generally, I'm not saying every single one, but generally they have a low voltage power transformer. There's ways you can kind of get around it, and that's okay, but they're a little weak and fuzzy sounding for my taste. But I think it would be better. What I do with those generally is I swap out the power transformer in those amps. Like if someone really wants to mod it right, which is not that big of a deal. I mean, it's not that expensive of an undertaking. It's like $100 transformer and, half an hour labor or something.
Do the little step bump up.
But there's ways you can kind of trick it. Like you can up the preamp voltages so that they're the right thing, but then just the power tubes have the lower voltage. So there's ways to trick it so you can make it sound pretty good. So yes, could.
Give them an email at racksystems@yahoo.com.
There you go.
Check out your needs. Here's another one. Zazu. I forgot my glasses today, so Zazu Zonker. I hope I got this right. Does Dave think that that Friedman will ever do a lower cost line of guitars and amps under another name like Gibson does with Epiphone or PRS-SE?
I don't know. I don't know yet. Probably not guitars. I don't think.
I mean, you've already got the Runt line, which is really reasonable price.
Yeah, I don't think, and there's some new stuff that's coming that will. I mean, nothing's ever going to sort of be, at least at this point, nothing's ever going to be, say, under $1,000.
Yeah,
that's just not going to happen.
By the way, we just hit 700 people online, so that's great.
Great. There is some new stuff that's coming, which I'm not saying anything about, but I can tell you that it will probably be between a whole line of things, and they'll probably be between the $1,000 to $2,000 mark, hopefully.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of amps now that are already in there, like the little 20-watt amps and things are like $12.99 or $14.99, and I know for a lot of people that's expensive and stuff, but then the best thing I can tell you is maybe buy one of the pedals and use it into your favorite low-cost clean thing.
There you go.
And that gets pretty ripping. Pete did a great video of the BEOD.
It's a ripping sounding pedal. If you want a modded Marshall kind of sound, it's vicious. And the nice thing about the BEOD pedal is it has that great ability to tame the top end. You can pretty much run it into any amp. I mean, it doesn't matter how bright or how dark it is. It's got the ability to deal with it with both the presence and treble knobs.
Yeah, you can go way dark or brighten it up. Yeah.
Good feature. Rodney Wallace wants to know, would you build a high gain amp, I guess, with the tone stack before the preamp?
Probably not. You want to just filter, basically you want to filter in the early stage the amount of low end that is going into the latter stages, I imagine. Yeah, I mean, I've experimented with that before, and it just winds up being, I don't know. I don't really care for it that much.
Nick makes a good point here that I kind of like. He says, priorities, dude. There was a time I made $12,000 a year and owned a Friedman amp, I guess. Don't get yourself into trouble, and you can have what you want. I think that's a cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, people get it. People buy it. I know. I mean, there's to be honest, I mean, well, look, it costs a lot to make this stuff, and there's a lot of things that people never consider. You know, we've talked about this before on air and at different times, but you know, yeah, you can look at it as parts cost and the labor for a guy building it, but that's not the cost of the amp.
Right.
Who's paying the production manager that orders all the parts? Who's a high dollar figure? Who's paying the marketing guys that are you know, doing videos and getting stuff done there? Who's paying the accountant? Who's paying the insurance? Who's paying the building rent? Who's paying? I mean, it's a big operation. And then you also have to consider that a store or your dealers have to make money on the product also. So there's all sorts of markups, you know, that unfortunately that's just the way it is. You know, that's the way it works. And we're not an outfit that's building an amp in a garage. Right. You know, there's it's a 60,000 square foot facility.
Yeah. There's a thing that we this was pretty much what our whole show was on last week, or at least a big part of it. But there's a sort of a, I don't know, ecosystem that you support if you buy a great American made product. And sure, you sell in Sweetwater and some of the different sort of, which is, you know, great operation in their own way or whatever, but you also sell out of a lot of boutique stores. High end, but and you know, so and that's something that I don't ever want to see go away. Is a nice guitar store where I can go to, and it's owned by maybe a guy that really loves guitar, that's been doing
that's the best.
You know, and you go in there and like, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is like Austin Guitar House in my mind or something. I love that store, going there, or like some of these different shops, and you go in and they care so much, and everybody in there plays in a band, and they're all into it. And they've got all the boutique brand. I don't ever want to see that stuff go away. And when you get an amp from a store like that, especially something like a Friedman or Sir, you're supporting that whole awesome culture of like, as opposed to just, I want the cheapest, I want the tone, but I want to get it as cheap as possible. And I'm willing to get it how it, you know, I get that, like at the end of the day, but there's this beautiful guitar culture that we don't want to see vanish, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely not, you know.
The Hunter is up there in the top chat, and he says the Phil X amps is one of the best amps I have ever tried out. Super forgiving tone stack, flexibility for different styles and mixes. Was flexibility for different styles and mixes and sessions a factor in the design of the amp? Like maybe because Phil does sessions and stuff.
I mean, not really. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of a derivative of a BE channel. They're just all stripped down. There's just nothing on the amp. There's a little higher voltage option switch that you can basically just boost the preamp voltages a little bit, so it gets a little more, you know, headroomy or a little squishier in the distortion. It's interesting, just varying a little bit of voltage and across the whole preamp will change the character of the amp. Has an extra master volume that you can just, you know, punch on for a lead thing, which he does.
Sounds like he likes.
He's a volume knob guy. It's just like roll the volume knob off in the guitar, one pickup, you know, and he gets all the sounds out of his volume knob and the guitar and the interaction between that and the amp.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard him play through a lot of different amps, and it sounds to me like he's like kind of like a, just give me that great core basic tone, and then I'm gonna make it work. You know? Well,
it's sort of like, you know, the core, sort of how I did it when I was younger. You know, it's just like you used one amp.
Yeah.
You used one amp. You used a volume knob in your guitar. Here's my clean sound. Whoop. Here's my medium sound. Here's my lead sound. That's why the volume exists. You know, it's like there's so many tonalities in the pickup combinations and just the volume knob on a guitar. It's almost like you want to lock a kid in a room and go, here, you have this one amp, one sound, one channel.
Yeah.
Now, play with your pickups and your volume knobs and all the sounds and tone knobs and everything. Play with all that and see how many sounds you can get.
It's a great answer, and that's certainly the kind of player he is. Old school. Pete Lasis is up in the top chat there, and he says, any experience with 30th anniversary Marshalls? I remember those. They had one of the first 3-channel Marshalls, I think.
Oh God, that thing was horrible.
And well, he says, would these be considered low voltage, like some of the JCM 800s? And would it?
This didn't sound good.
They had one good. I like the crunch channel in that amp.
Yeah, I just remember them being as problematic.
Yeah,
not sounding great.
They ran hot. I remember that, right?
Yeah, had lots of issues with those.
And he's asking, would it benefit from a transformer upgrade or any other?
Man, I wouldn't even. I mean, no.
Not your favorite Marshall.
Not my favorite. I wouldn't put the time and effort into it.
I thought that was the amp that Ty used on Ear Candy, Ty Tabor. And then I asked him, and he said, actually, it was a 25th anniversary Marshall. And when I thought about that, I was like, wait a minute, you mean a Jubilee? But I didn't. I should have clarified that with him when I was interviewing him. But I didn't.
I'm not sure.
Because it just slipped by. But he said that, and he says, actually, the 25th was the one I used, and the 30th was my backup. And I was like, I had always heard it was a 30th anniversary Marshall on Ear Candy, which is
I'm not saying, I'm not saying that you couldn't get a tone out of it. I mean, generally, if you're a good player and you know how to get your stuff, you'll twist the knobs and you'll find a certain volume. And generally, like on amps that don't sound very good, you have to get them up in volume a little bit and pull the gain back. And then, don't you find that, like, you got a crappy amp in your back line. You're like, what am I going to do here? I'll turn it up louder, pull the gain back. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, wait, I can finagle that. That'll work.
Well, once again, I think you make a great point, because it's like the distortion, the more the higher gain an amp gets, the more it blows up all the characteristics of the amp and accentuates them. So if an amp so for instance, like an old Fender, generally speaking, people don't think of them as great high gain distorted amps. The higher you get them, the more they flub out and stuff. But there is this fine line where they sound, most old Fenders sound really cool, like up to a certain point. And then beyond that, you don't want to go, because they'll get crazy, right? So yeah, I think you make a good point. Like many times volume adds gain and sustain, because it's really just feedback and interaction with the guitar and the pickup, and that can sound really cool. But you make good, like even Phil is a guy that doesn't use all the gain on a BE, which isn't
not at all.
You back it down to 6 or 7 and then turn it up really loud,
right?
And all in his hands, kind of. So he's very aggressive hands. Okay, I'm going to move down to the bottom of the chat and try and get to a bunch more. If anybody asks a question, I'll try and go as fast as we can. But I'll move down the bottom. Please ask it again if I've missed it, because I've missed it.
Wait, there is one guy here. Intense Jim did for chat. Dave, have you ever considered doing a high gain Dumble style amplifier? I don't like Dumbles, so that's just not going to happen.
It's not your real.
I don't really love Dumbles. I never have, and it's just not my thing.
Yeah,
great clean sounds,
But the high gain, smooth American distortion, or like, it's not what you're into, right?
It's not really what I'm into. I'm into British amps. That's what I like,
That's cool. Dave stays in his lane. What do you understand?
Hey, one more quick super chat.
Yeah.
Are you planning on producing an amp with a built-in reactive load, IR loader for the low or no volume applications? Maybe that could be happening. Maybe what I was talking about earlier.
Are you saying I'm going to have a competitor?
Maybe. You probably already do.
Healthy competition.
Probably the other one's already out there.
Healthy competition amongst friends.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see here. Comment on JBL, says Johnny. JBL speakers. Comment on JBL?
Heavier than hell.
Heavy, yeah.
Heavy, bright, really bright.
Big magnets.
Not really the greatest speaker. I mean, I guess it had, its thing.
Well, once again, pretty cool for clean sounds, because blow it up with distortion, and now like an aluminum dust cap or whatever, like some of the D's had.
Yeah, for clean sounds, it was almost acoustic like.
Right. It gives you this
like that top end.
Yeah, it'd be a nice thing.
Twins with JBLs. Oh boy, that's a lovely amp to lift.
Yeah. Exactly, but it was a sound. It's almost like when you think about JC 120s, like that's a sound. Like clean guitar is such a different thing than distorted guitar.
JC 120 is great.
It's what's that?
JC 120 was great.
Yeah, but try it distorted, and it's like, oh my god, no.
Yeah, no, that's awful. But but you know, if you're the Cure or something, you know, it's awesome.
Or Billy Duffy, or
yeah,
right. I mean,
well, that was the go-to standard thing in the 80s, even for metal bands and things. Was you had a JC 120 for clean, and then your modded Marshall or your Marshall going on for the dirty. They had AD between them.
Nothing like it.
Like Metallica and everything back in the day, you know.
Great sound.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that contrast of the two.
That was the go-to, and it does work. It does work really well, actually.
764 people online.
All right.
It continues to grow. Nice to have all you folks here on this Sunday. Who else we got in here? Let's see. Question for Dave. Robin Hansen says, you said Eddie's plexi had the bias turned all the way up at 80 volts. I thought it was like 80 volts with the Variac in the last tone talk. Can you do this if the plexi is provided? Can you do this?
Okay, so let me clarify this. So, bias set, so it's the highest current. That's what I mean by turned up. I mean, that's not technically what's happening, but roughly speaking, in a vintage Marshall of that era, if you're at 120 volt wall voltage and you turn the bias up so it's at the highest current, and this is all dependent on the tubes also, the highest current, it's somewhere around 80 milliamps. If you then drop to 90 volts on the Variac, it's somewhere around 50 milliamps. And this is a generalization because it depends on the set of tubes that's in the amp. So it's roughly in that neighborhood. So speaking, when I set up an amp for a Variac, I set it to 50 mils per tube when the Variac's at 90 volts exactly, measured.
That's good.
And that's how I know that's how the server is set up, you know, the SL68 and stuff too. So
it's good info. I mean, basically, as I understand it, it was super crude, probably why you used to blow up a lot, but Ed used to just crank the bias when he dropped the voltage, which might have worked, but...
Well, he just cranked the bias and just like, so what happens if I do this?
Right. and it could be, probably because it sounded like crap if the bias was anywhere below or not quite crank because...
Yeah, I mean, you know, the funny thing is, you know, an amp will work surprisingly biased really cold also. You know, you could the tubes could be operating at 7 milliamps each. The amp will still seem like it's working fine. Just might be a little thin sounding, might be a little bright sounding. You know, it just might not have richness to it, but you know, it'll work.
Yeah. And
some people like under biased amps, so sometimes they like the crossover distortion. So it depends on the what you're shooting in the amp.
So many nice folks here doing the super chat. It's like hard to keep up. You guys are so cool. But Probe K says, please split it equally. I'll take Dave out for sushi. That's what I'll do. Dave,
okay, hold on here. Let's see here.
He says, thanks for your Viamp episode. Incredible content. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. And Dave was a big part of that, of course. When you're in Germany, get in contact and I will cook for you. I like it.
Okay, I see 2 super chats here. So I see one that says, Dave, if you don't nearly need all the gain on tap from a Wildwood Small Box 50, would you recommend a 5751 in any of the preamp tube positions? Yeah, you can use it in V1 on that amp, and that will mostly, thinking about this for a second here. Yeah, that mostly should take care of it. I think that will lower the gains to both channels, though. I mean, if you want less, I can modify the amplifier too to have less. I've done that for a few people. It just has less gain.
What about that structure switch you put on some of your amps?
Yeah, I can't do it on that particular amp on the small box.
Mm-mm.
But there is one resistor I can add to the small box that would greatly reduce the gain on the dirty channel. And then the big super chat. Thank you, Pro K. So yeah, you read that already.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
You guys are too kind. Joel Eakins says this is a specific cool question. His church has a couple of Buxom Bettys, and they seem to start breaking up with the volume on 2. Do they need new preamp tubes or rebias? That sounds like a similar question. Like,
maybe. I mean, those amps tend to start breaking up, or maybe they could have some other issues.
So dependent on the guitar. I mean, what if
it's pretty loud though? Let me tell you.
Yeah.
At 2 or 3 on that amp, it's cooking loud.
Maybe he's hitting it with like a guitar with hot pickups or something.
Yeah, maybe too. So I mean, but I think it starts breaking up. Generally speaking, on that amp, I think it starts breaking up at around 3.5 or 4 or something, just a little. You know.
Yeah.
Will you know how hot your pickups are? Yeah, that could totally change it. If you use a JB into it, it's like, yeah, that's gonna make it break up. Use a Strat into it, it's different.
Waiting for an Alibi says, will you do a video on the Sykes amp? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. Dave was nice enough to ask. The way the Vai video came about was Dave was nice enough to ask Steve. And Steve's a really, I mean, these are people that have their equipment in for service. And I completely understand that some of those people wouldn't even want somebody else touching their gear. It depends on the type of person. Like that's probably most people. I don't know if I would want anybody but Vi is a certain kind of guy. He's just a very nice person.
Steve's a really nice person and really approachable and stuff. So it's just like, yeah, just send him in. Hey, you know Pete, don't you?
Yeah, and we do. Which isn't to say that somebody wouldn't be nice if they didn't want, it's just a certain kind of like relationship or whatever. So that was a special situation, the one with Steve, right? Yeah, I mean, Dave's got a with the folks that bring him equipment. Of course, many times, the amps they've recorded. I mean, it's like special gear, and they got to trust Dave with this. That was just a special situation, so that's not probably going to be repeated that many times. If there's a situation though where it's like a cool opportunity,
maybe there'd be a Vai Part 2 one.
One thing I'm going to do for sure is I've got actually more from the interview I did with him, asking him some other things. So there'll be more coming out that I did with him because he's been so wonderful with his, his time and the questions and stuff I was able to ask him. But I am going to do a video, which you had quite a bit to do with this, which he mentioned in the video for the Jose, but the module for the Synergy, this is your signature. So there'll be a video on this, which is some more content.
Yeah.
Even you too, because you had tell us about like your involvement in this thing.
Well, it was basically Peter Ahrens and myself. And it was, he essentially sort of wanted, he tried a bunch of the modules and stuff, and he sort of wanted like the clean basement-y thing for the clean channel on that, and wanted.
I just got to say, this is funny. 777 people online right now, which is so Steve Vai. It's amazing. That's weird.
So he wanted essentially the dirty channel. I mean, he's used to using his channel, out of his little carbon amp and stuff. And so he had the little carbon preamp pedals that he was using, which is basically the front end of the carbon amp. And so he wanted that channel in the module.
Okay.
But I think there was a couple little changes that were made, kind of put it in. Because once you put it in this module and then you listen to it with the power amp, you need to make some tweaks to the module in order to match up the tone to the original, or, the amp. Like, I had his little, whichever legacy it was there. And we were A-Bing with an amp switcher back and forth. I think you came in one time when I was doing that.
Yeah, I did.
And you're like, you hear a difference? Is it good right now? And you're like, it's the same.
Yeah, I remember.
Like
And this is where ears come in, like you say, like, because you can put the right parts in, the right parts, like whatever is in the other thing. But then once you combine it with a different power section, things change. You need to massage it.
Yeah, exactly. You need to massage it. You need to, yeah. And, you know, just because it's working, or a tech or an amp builder or someone has made something, yeah, it's exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, yeah, but it doesn't sound right.
So many like, let's take a dual rectifier or whatever, right?
Yeah, it doesn't sound right. So what are we going to do? You know, we need to fix it, you know?
Yeah.
So
or you end up with a different, like so many amps back in the day were like people copying other things. Like that's what a JTM 45 is to a Bassman. Well, I don't know. Here's the basic design. Let's copy it. Oh, but we can't get that part. So we'll put this British equivalent in, including tubes. And then you end up with a different sounding amp. So sometimes those are happy things.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you know, you have to use an amp switcher for this stuff. And you really have to you really can't look at what you're switching between either. You just need to kind of do it blindfold.
That's a good point.
I mean, generally speaking, if I get someone in the room that I'm working with that they're listening to, I just have them turn their back and I switch while they're playing, and they don't know what they're hearing. And I try to make them guess. Okay, which is this? Which is that? Which is that? If they guess wrong like 5 times, you know, you guess 10 times, and if 5 of them those times are wrong, then it's done. You know? Right. They can't tell. They can't tell. But you have to use an amp switcher, and you can be tricked into thinking something by just looking at it, thinking something doesn't sound the same.
Right.
Also, volume level. You have to make sure the volume levels are matched perfectly.
Oh, that's a big one.
Otherwise, it'll trick you in thinking, no, that one's better. Well, that one's just louder.
Yeah, every time, pretty much louder is better.
The only way you can do any kind of comparison is blindfold amp switcher.
Yeah, it's a great thing to know. That this isn't even about, this is like kind of a different thing, but similar, is that with plugins, you will notice many times with plug-in software effects that if like compressors or any kind of like preampy thing, or sometimes it's just whatever it is, sometimes you turn them on and it gets a little louder.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. Like that's a trick that I think they just, let's make the output 1.5 dB louder when it's on than when it's off. And then everybody be like, oh, that plugin does a nice thing to my tone. It's like, no. Like it's an interesting thing about compressors. They sort of boost, you know, like compressor pedals, any kind of compressor. They sort of, you know, what you want to do is try and like, if you like the boost tone, that's cool. But if you want to hear the actual tone of what the thing is doing to the tone, match the volume so that the peak when you hit it hard is the same.
Yeah.
You know, match the volume. You know, same thing with
it's like skews.
Yeah, it'll skew your, and certainly if you're A-Bing 2 amps and going, which one's better? They got to be volume matched. Like, or
Eric Scott gave you a super chat. He wants to just say thanks for doing what you do to the music, with the music industry and stuff, for both of us.
Awesome, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And then there's a Justin. Boy, I can't pronounce your last name. Sorry, Jason. I can't pronounce your first name either.
Pedalboard.
Okay.
I think.
There you tried. Any plans on a 20-watt butter slacks or maybe a pedal? Not currently, no. Never know in the future. We'll see.
I sure like that butter slacks amp. That's a fun one.
That's gain, more gain, and even more gain.
Vando Flores was up there in the super chat. He said, Dave, what are some mods that are possible on the JJ Junior? I know about the foot switchable JBE mod, but is there any other, maybe a depth or structure?
Yeah, you can do stuff like that. Although depth I could do on that amp. I don't know so much about the structure. It has to sort of be a certain way to be kind of stable. Mm-hmm. Yes, and other than that, yeah, the switchable JB we can do with an extra master and stuff. That's the most common ones. I mean, it sounds great, so I don't want to mess with it too much.
Stuart, he's over in the UK somewhere. Stuart, Stuart, he says, Dave, sorry, when do you think that we will see the Neil Schoen signature Friedman? Is that a thing?
I don't know if that will ever happen.
Just something you were talking about at some point.
We were talking about it at one point in time, and then I don't know what's happened with that.
Yeah, many factors at play.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move down to the bottom here. How did you come up with the name for the Butter Slacks? Isn't that like his nickname or something?
Yeah. So what the deal with the Butter Slacks was it was his nickname when he was younger, and also one of his first band names. But his nickname, it happened one day. You know the saying, the old saying, "What's up, X-Lax?" Yeah, that old kind of thing. So his friend kind of morphed it one day and just said, "What's up, Butter Slacks?" And it just sort of stuck. So that was the story. That's how Butter Slacks came out. I love that name.
I do too.
It's even funnier because there's one of our techs down at the thing. I don't know, he's from Guatemala or something, or down at the factory, and when he says Butter Slacks, it's Butter Slaps with his accent.
Right.
And when you say Butter Slaps, every time he says it, I'm just like amused, completely amused by it. Butter Slaps.
It's like you can put out a product and have a sense of humor all at the same time. You're pretty good about that. But like having some fun. Exactly. I always like that. It's supposed to be.
You have to be, man. Come on. It's like,
not be so
especially
sad.
These days. Right now,
Yeah, let's have a good time.
Yeah.
Les says he's wondering if you have any new pedals on the way.
Well, we have the small box pedal that we showed at NAMM, and there was no videos from it from NAMM, which is special. I'm sure Pete will be doing a video of it shortly.
I didn't even know that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah. Well, it's not ready yet, so but I actually have one I can give you in advance. Do the video and just hold it.
Here it is.
It sounds really good, man. It sounds it has a mid-range knob. It sounds anywhere from like lighter plexi kind of sounding stuff to about as much gain as a small box has. So not crazy over the top.
A couple other things. Any words? This is Jacob. Any words on Helix's BE reproduction? I know I was knocked out by it, and I played it for you, and the first thing you said was "those motherfuckers."
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say the BE model in the Helix is pretty good.
It's one of my favorites.
I'll be honest. They did a good job with that one.
Yeah, it's got a great kind of. Now, when you compare to still tune amp, there's still a little difference. I
still need to put your own IRs in it.
Yeah, I showed it to you with the Celestion IR, and that's what really kicks it over the top. But it is a really good amp model. My favorite high gain, my go-to high gain one in there for sure. I used it actually I did a video with Leo from Frog Leap Studios, and that's I think. Oh no, that's not true. That's not what I used on that. Oh, I say that because I'm drawing a mental connection. I used actually your BE 100 plugin from UA.
Okay. Great.
On that video because I was at GitCon over in Germany, and I needed I had 20 minutes to cut the solo, and so I came up with a solo and then cut it. But I used the BE. That was before my plugin even came out.
By the way, people, if you don't know that all the the BE and the Dirty Shirley plugins from Brainworks are also now available natively. No. So you don't need the UA hardware for those two plugins anymore. You can get them from Brainworks. You can also, if you have any stuff in there, bundles and stuff, I think they're bundled with stuff too. Comes with their big bundle that they have.
Dive Bomb says, I just lost it here. The chat move. Oh yeah, there it is. Ever test out Friedman amps with Redbacks? That's a speaker you tried recently and liked, right?
Redback. I think the Redback's cool. It sounds very much like a greenback type speaker, but just high power handling capability.
They've gotten that down pretty good lately, like high power speakers that sound good.
Yeah, I mean the Redback sounds cool. I mean, like it's great. It's fantastic for combos where we were having a problem for a while because we used Greenback M65s in a bunch of combos that should be fine, but a lot of them blew up.
Yeah, something wrong.
So I think there's something wrong with that series of speakers. I could be wrong, but
not the H. The H Greenback is great.
The H is fine. The H
no
is fine. Doesn't have a problem. I could be wrong. Maybe there's not, and maybe it just doesn't like being in an open back cabinet abused. So I think on some of them, I don't know if we haven't done it yet. I've told them to order some, but I think we'll be switching to like the single 12 stuff to the Redback because
yeah,
super cool. I mean, I thought it sounded great. I put in a Dirty Shirley for someone combo and listened to it. I'm like, wow, that sounds great.
I got to listen to it closer. You're making me really think.
Listen to it in the cabinet that you have in the other room.
Yeah, that I borrowed for that thing. Yeah.
If you didn't blow it up.
I haven't. No, I needed when I was actually doing I think it was some of the Steve Vai video. I used Dave had a Redback that I borrowed from him and put in my cabinet room because I was worried about. I've got a cabinet with old 25-watt blackbacks in it, and I was cranking the amp pretty, and it's 100 watts, and I was like, I just don't. I want to like play loud, but I don't want to blow up the amp. So he lent me the 112, and I plugged it in and just put it away, not mic'd or anything. So I was using it as a way to dissipate power, basically. But I want to listen to that cabinet. The other speaker they have that's great, that's high power, is the Alnico Cream.
Yeah, it's great speaker also. Yeah, killer.
Really nice, almost like maybe nicer than a Blue in some ways, like a little more smoother or something. But yeah, Slushin's doing the high power thing really well lately. Steve's up there in the top chat. He says your compressor pedal is my favorite pedal for boosting an amp. Did you have that in mind when you designed it? I think you probably.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing about that compressor. It's fantastic for like. Well, you can use it. It's funny. You can use that totally. You can just turn the compression down. You can totally use it into a high gain amp to boost it some more. It actually is. It sounds really super cool for that.
Yeah.
Originally, it wasn't intended for that. Originally, it was sort of intended to give you, if you had a totally clean, say, Fender amp and wanted a little grit to that Fender amp with still a little of the gush, almost like you turn that Fender amp up a little bit more to get some of the distortion out of it.
Yeah.
Like a Tom Petty kind of thing or something. And it works incredible for that also. But it turns out it sounds really cool as a boost into a dirty amp.
Yeah, I mean, probably not unlike the way I use my Unit 67, the dry bell pedal. That's like a 1176 with a Rangemaster style boost. But I love all these kind of, like a little compression mixed with a little boost, and that's the sound I used on tour recently for all the, like when I was playing the Who and certain sounds, I would.
Oh yeah, especially that.
Yeah,
great.
Had the amp set clean, and then I would use the Bogner Blue for a bit of plexi drive, and then I would hit that with the compressor and boost, and it was like shit. That's like actually one of my favorite sounds, that I had going on the tour. It's pretty cool. You can hear it. There's a video of us playing Who Are You, and that's what that sound is with my Mac Multi with Pete.
Yeah, right before when you were learning those songs, I had given you that or sent you that isolated guitar track from that, right?
Yeah, it was a Pete isolated guitar track from that, which was a big inspiration to hear it and go, oh, okay.
It was just like, oh my God, this is great. I can listen to just the parts.
Yeah, I tried to he's obviously just improvising going. So it was like, okay, you don't note for note this, but I learned a few of the things that he would do in the verses and the moves. And then I just incorporated that into my own kind of, I mean, I'm sort of verbatim playing what he plays.
Yeah, he's like a living, breathing, crazy, off the cuff guitar player.
Yeah.
You got to think when that was recorded, it was just like spontaneous.
Well, John Button, who plays bass with them now, said it's like a jazz gig. Yeah, I mean, you kind of play the tunes, but there's a lot of jamming going on, like just where it's open, and they want that. They want the freedom and the, it sounds like in some ways, especially on bass, seems like the funnest gig in the world, where you can just go for it, play the key things, and then like there's these big, I love John's story. I got to tell again, is where he said, I mean, give me a break. You're playing with the Who, like, it's kind of mind blowing. And he played with Roger for years at that point, but then all of a sudden he's doing the Who gig. And he said it was 3 gigs into the tour or 4 gigs, maybe on the 4th gig where, because John's such a focused kind of guy playing and stuff like that. And you know, so he's just concentrating on doing a good job, going, yeah, this is amazing, you know, but everything's cool. But the fourth day or whatever, he's playing and he looks up and Pete Townsend's coming at him on his knees across the stage with his arm up in the air, you know, like doing one of those slides. And he goes, that's when it hit me that I was playing on stage with the Who, you know, that when Pete was like just coming at me like on his knees, you know.
It's hard to believe he can still do that.
I know. Man, I saw them with Entwistle still, so it was 2000, and it was so long ago. But he wasn't a young man then, and I remember seeing him and going like, God, his energy is unbelievable. Like he was jumping around, and he's still doing it. Like really, I saw them twice on the last tour, and it's pretty amazing. It's I don't know. It's pretty special. We still have these guys around, some of them, you know. Yeah. John is there, and I got to get to some of these top chat situations. John is there. Thanks, man. He says, I want to thank Pete for so much great guitar music. Thanks, man. And Dave for his major contributions to the guitar amplifier ecosystem. And I'll add to that rig. You've done so much over the years, building great amps, great rigs for people. And it's awesome. Some of the other ones we got up here. Let me see. If either you had an old Fender amp, this is a Zonker, like a 66 Super, where would you send it to have it serviced and brought back to original spec? Well, Dave could do that. I mean, he's your man. He's right here. They're pretty simple amps. I mean, honestly, it's like you can go through them, right, and look at some of the things. Many times it's probably just routine, like filter caps, right?
Yeah, most vendors, it's just filter caps generally always need replacing in those amps. They are generally, the ones that they use are generally just completely toast. And just checking to make sure that, you know, everything's functioning right. There's not like a crackly resistor or different things like that. But tubing, obviously.
Yeah, hit up racksystems@yahoo.com.
Yeah, or friedmanamps@gmail.com. Either one will get me.
EP Stone is somewhere in the over the pond, and he says, Dave, sorry, God, my eyes are such crap. He says, Dave, could you please consider, I just lost his super chat. Damn it, now I gotta find it.
They're all at top.
It just went away. Because they vanish after a certain amount of time. There we go. Could you consider 2 new Synergy modules? Dirty Shirley, what does that say? DS/SB/plexi plus BE/HBE. That would be my dream 4-channel Friedman. So Dirty Shirley, what's SB?
Small box.
Well, I mean, it's probably not far off from. Isn't the plexi? Probably not a lot of people know this, but Dave had a lot to do with the design of a lot of the modules. So the plexi module is probably not too far off from Dirty Shirley and plexi, right?
Well, I mean, the plexi module is different. I mean, what you're asking is kind of hybrids of stuff. I mean, like the high gain channel on the small box essentially is a BE channel, so it's a BE channel. I've been wanting to do a small box module that gives you that amp, that plexi channel, and the small box just laid out like the same.
Yeah.
You know? Or maybe 2 EQs. I don't know. We'll see. There might be there's some other modules that are going to be in the works and stuff that we're doing. We'll see.
Then is there? So then he says BE/HBE. Is there not a BE/HBE?
Well, there's 2 separate modules. There's a BE and an HBE.
Okay.
Now we are working on something that's going to be out eventually that will solve what you're talking about.
Cool. Okay, good to know. So maybe all that stuff is coming.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue doing stuff with, you know, different modules and stuff. So yeah, sure.
Omar says he has a butchered 73 Super Lead 100. Would Dave work on it? I think yes, right? Yeah. Restore it or mod it. Vi videos made me consider the mod route. I mean, you could do whatever you want, right?
Whatever you want with it, we can. I'm the king of restoring and or modding them.
In Dave's shop, there's always like 10 heads lying on their sides, always sitting there in line, ready to
go. I
have
10 heads at my house right now. In boxes, sitting by my front door, which my wife is starting to look at me like going, really?
Les says, Pete, do you have any material coming out, like new songs? If so, are you using Friedman amps on any of the tracks? Well, okay, a couple of things that I have coming pretty soon. I've really got to finish this, but it's taking a long time because it's a hell of an edit. But I've got a video I did with Bob Clearmountain, mixing genius and legend, where he's mixing a song that I recorded in 2012 and going over a bunch of the really great information about how to organize a mix, and then about different he's telling some really cool things in there, but talking about his plugin a little bit, what replicates his signal flow in his studio, and how he does things like adding reverb and delay to guitars and vocals and stuff, and getting them loud in the mix without them being overbearing. And so it's a really, really great video. But he's mixing one of my songs, and I'm going to put that song out as a single because it's a Bob Clearmountain mix, and so why not? It's fantastic what he did. I'm not saying my song's fantastic. I'm saying his work on it. I mean, he makes me look good, and I'm singing on it, which would be the first thing I've ever put out where I'm actually singing. So, so that's coming, and I'm actually really proud of the guitar solo on that song. I think it's not what you would expect. It's not a full out rock. It's kind of like almost an Americana sounding track or something. So there's that coming. And then in addition to that, I've got a video coming pretty soon for this FM3 from Fractal, which is sitting on my desk. And my plan is to record. I did a video for Fractal years ago for the Axe Effects where I played Homage, a song off Guitar Nerd. And I just played the whole song all the way through and used patches on the Axe Effects. And it was a really, really popular video for them. And they're like, can you please make us another video like that? Because that video's got many hundreds of thousands of views. And I thought, why don't I just write a new song, kind of like I've done with different modeler units, like the Head Rush and stuff, different ones. And I'll record that track using the FM3. And who knows, maybe make the presets available or something like that. Just something to do. So it's like a little project. So my plan for an FM3 video is record a full song with 7 or 8 different guitar parts and then put that out. So that'll be 2 new things coming, just singles, basically. So a couple new singles coming. Okay, I'm going to move down to the bottom here. Dave, what's the email to contact you asking for a friend? Says my knees hurt. Rack Systems, one word, of course, at yahoo.com or Friedman Amps. Is that right?
Or Friedman Amps at gmail.com. Either one I get. And that's Rack Systems as in RACKSYSTEMS at yahoo.com or Friedman Amps, which you know how to spell, at Gmail. Either one.
Kazuki Yoshida is in the chat. Ohayou gozaimasu. He says, Mr. Friedman, is there a difference tonally between the BE channel of the JJ Junior Runt and the Pink Taco?
Okay, so, well, I mean, yes, Pink Taco is different. It's voiced differently for the power section in that amp. It's darker. That amp has a little more squish to the feeling of it. Feels awesome to play the little Pink Taco amp. But definitely attenuated on the top end a bit. So then the JJ BE channel is a traditional BE channel for the most part out of the JJ 100 amp. Maybe ever so slightly different than the traditional one. And the channel it's in a Runt 20, if you're asking that, is a kind of a hybrid between the JJ Junior's channel and the Pink Taco's channel. A couple parts changes different.
Okay. Jason Hobbs, sorry, Jason, I don't really understand, but he says, missed super chat, please. First for everything. What does that mean? I wonder. Sorry, did I miss a chat from you, Jason? It's hard to keep up. I'm sorry. If I did, I can go back and look. Maybe we'll ask Dave a question here, and then we can move on. Somebody else, well, I'll go look while Dave answers. Joshua says, so what's the difference in all the JCM models? Does that mean like JCM 800s?
I mean, there really isn't. I mean, all the JCM, JCM, if you're talking JCM 800s, there was the inputs up and down, and then inputs side by side. And then there was also a JCM 800 that was 2 channels that was a totally different amp. And those are kind of dogs. Although some people have made their careers with those amps. Tom Morello uses that 2-channel JCM 800. So does Michael Schenker these days. It's interesting.
That's interesting.
It's kind of a weird sounding. That's a weird sounding amp. I don't really care for it.
Tom Morello
can't mod that one or can't do anything, but it works for them with what they use it with.
Tom Morello, his whole career, right? Basically one amp.
Yep, one amp with a PV speaker cabinet.
That's right. Which I love, actually.
Yeah. Which really yeah. And so other than that, I mean, the differences between, the basic JCM 800 circuit's the same. But the difference between side-by-side inputs or up and down inputs, really, the up and down inputs had more traditional filtering of a 100-watt Marshall and or a 50-watt Marshall. Later, in the later ones, they reduced the number of filter caps in the amp. It doesn't really make that much of a difference.
Zazonker says he'd like to support Dave and his company. Would like to know which modeler and plug-in companies actually license or pay you. Brainworks, right?
Brainworks, that's it. No one else.
Brainworks. Now it's available. It was originally available only on the UA platform, BE100 and Dirty Shirley, but now you can get it natively.
Yeah, correct. And the funny thing, there's something new from Brainworks too. I don't know if you saw this. I don't even know what it's called exactly. I forgot it. But Dirk for Brainworks come up with this virtual guitar rig thing.
Yeah.
With super low latency, and you can create rigs, and you control it via MIDI. You can do it with your laptop, and really, it's like a rig. You can create your setup at super low latencies,
and then plug it into a
kind of like almost like the main stage originally. They had main stage with. It's kind of like that idea, but in with all these cool. I mean, you can use any of the Brainworks plugins or just insert them in this thing, and it's cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna do something for him for that. He's asked me about it a bunch of times.
Oh, you should. I think it's really cool. I mean, it seems. I don't know a lot about it yet, but he told me about it early on, and then I saw a little bit here and there on it. So I don't even know what it's called. Sorry, Dirk.
I'm gonna check it out soon. Center 706 is up there in the top chat. By the way, Jason Tobbs, if I missed your chat, please ask the question down at the bottom, and I'm gonna look at the bottom just anytime over the next 30 seconds here. Ask, and then I'll get to it. If I missed your chat, I'm super chat. But Center 706 is up there, and he says the BE50 wrecked my world. It stopped me in my tracks, and I've been obsessed ever since. So no question other than
cool, great.
He wants to borrow one from you. I think you have to buy one. Thanks.
I don't even own
one. Somebody wants SD Design wants a telly, the color of Pete and Dave's wall paint. I know, it's funny. Those are actually my panels. That's actually cloth back there, but on Dave's wall, we got the exact same aesthetic going in our backgrounds. I like it.
Yeah.
Red and white and wood floor. Okay, what else have we got here? Oh, somebody had a question about the Buddha Super Drive. Did you have anything to do with that?
Yes, I designed the front end of that amp.
Yeah, okay.
Not the power section, but worked on the front end, the whole Super Drive series. Well, it started with the Super Drive 30, but then they parlayed that into the whole series.
Just worked, and then funny how that works. Todd Roy has a great point. He says, any chance doing getting Marty Friedman to do signature amp, because then people can buy a Friedman, which I really like.
I like the idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic. When using the Synergy Syn 1, says Steven, in a DAW with an IR loader, would I need to use any kind of power amp sim? You don't need to, but it's probably power amp sim.
Well, like if you're talking 2 notes, they have little power amp sims on their stuff that you could maybe, if you like the tone of it.
I'm gonna try it.
You just listen. Whatever you get the best tone out of, then go for it. You don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, I tried their power amp sims, and it's the one thing in the tune notes I didn't really understand. It was like I got really good tones using the 6L6 or the KT88, but the EL34 one, to me, they sound drastically different. And if you compare power tubes in an amp, they don't sound drastically different. Like an EL34 power section to say 5881s or 6L6s, yes, it changes the sound, but not like this. What I was hearing with their power amp sim was a remarkable difference in when I would go from one to the other. And the EL34 one sounded really thin to me. And I was like,
yeah, it's interesting. Like when you bring up the tubes aren't that different.
right? I mean,
I've done that test because, we had tube reliability issues and stuff. And I stuck 5881s in a BE100 and had two BE100s next to each other with an amp switcher. And again, you can simply turn the knobs ever so slightly differently, and it winds up being the same tone. It's not radically different.
Right.
Maybe slightly, but not radically.
Yeah.
It's
6L6s to EL34s. Yes, it's what you would expect. A little more scooped, a little more bottom, a little more top, but it's not this huge, which is why, like, say, the difference between the original, like, say, an OD100 clean channel and then the PT100 with the EL34s and a completely different output transformer. Yeah, the 6L6 has a little more of that sparkle, whatever, on the top end and stuff like that. But the PT100 has still the same basic clean sound. Really pretty close. Let's see here. And I've heard this a lot recently. Intense Jim's up there in the top chat. He says, "Am I the only one that think that Dave Friedman and David Gilmour look like brothers?" It's a good guy to look
the
like.
funny thing. This only comes up when my hair is really short and gray.
If you do the mohawk yeah,
because generally speaking, dark hair that it changes.
We should look at younger pictures of you. Like, I want to see you when you're like 20, and then the 20-year-old Dave Gilmour, and see if you guys look similar.
That's true.
Okay, what else have we got here? What's your opinion on Wizard amps? Says Jason. Oh, maybe that was Jason Hobbs' chat. Built by Rick St. Pierre. I love Wizard personally, but what do you think?
Wizard's brutal. Yeah, great amp. Well made. Kudos to Rick.
I mean, well made, like NASA spec kind of stuff going on, right?
Yeah, really, really well made, really in your face, really kind of brutal, bright. Good stuff. Good amps.
Yeah. I really like Rick. I went to a party at his place I went to his kid's birthday party once. I knew through a friend of a friend. I was in Vancouver, and he invited me over. So it was in White Rock, BC. And I always remember going, this would be like 1996, going to Rick's kid's birthday party. So how old's that kid now? He's like, I think he was 18 then. Like, now he's right. So that was a long time ago. But great. Oh, and I also remember that same trip that I remember. I went to see a band play. It was a friend's band, and Rick was there. And Rick said, "Hey, I'm having a party tomorrow or something. You want to come?" And I went to the party. That's what it was. And the guy playing in the band was using his like a modern classic head, and it sounded great. It was in a club, and Rick was in a local Vancouver band or something. But I used a couple of Wizard heads on my very first recording. That was like a signed. I was in a band called Surreal McCoys, and we were signed to a Japanese label. We used a Wizard, one of the ARD 50s, and ARD 80 watt. It was a 4-tube 80 watt head, so maybe it was a low voltage kind of 4-tube head, and then a 2-tube 50, and they were like plexis basically, and they sounded amazing. Great sound amps. Somebody wants to know if that head behind you your 50 watt. I don't think so, right? Is it?
Yes.
Is it? Is that your small box? It looks. Oh,
yeah, it's the 68 plexi.
Yeah, it's a great sounding.
Yeah, it's the small box, and then below it is my Jose.
A couple more up there in the top chat. Let's see. Let's do this one first. Zolzonker says, last question: If he was an amp maker, would upset you if someone modeled my amp without permission? Did Dave ever feel that way? How do you feel about that stuff when they come out with?
Oh, well, I mean, at this point, it just seems inevitable that this is happening. So I think there's a better business model out there, and I wish that people could get on the bandwagon with it in regards to amp makers and modelers. I think there's a business model that, you know, may be paying and helping with the development of these plugin, you know, these models into modelers.
Like Brainworks did.
Put a small little, you know, commission percentage on it, you know.
I mean,
I was your work and time and effort and
I was a part of the voicing of the PT100 plugin because they approached Sir, and so I got to hear a couple of the versions, and I made suggestions. And personally, and I've heard this from a lot of people, I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite plugin on their platform. I think if you get the people that designed the amp involved and are fair about it, everybody at this point is on board. I mean, if you can't beat them, join them, and it would just end up with better products and probably result in more sales.
Absolutely.
More happy.
And there is, it's, come on, there's the pricing, it could be worked out.
Yeah, totally. And then you get the benefit
to make a fortune.
You get the benefit of promotion from you, like making a video or talking about it, and it just builds into more. So I think you're right. There's a better business model.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of annoying, but it's also sort of flattering, I suppose, because imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. Okay, what else we got going here?
Jerry Kroll said, Dave, what are your favorite 12AX7s for V1, line stages, and phase inverter? Davey Rock, Pete, sincerely, you're such a great player and a great YouTuber. I appreciate all your content.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Man, favorite. You know, I'm just a big fan of Chinese 12AX7s, generally speaking. But, you know, phase inverter, I mean, I think the Sovtek LPS can be really cool in a phase inverter. That's a great tube for phase inverter. V1, I mean, I like Chinese tubes if you can get them non-microphonic. I like the tongue sole tube, depending on the amp and the circuit, can be cool for V1 also.
You find those bright sometimes?
Yes, but that's why I said they're on the bright side, but actually that really works sometimes for some distorted stuff. It sounds a little more, you know, attacky. They sound pretty good. You just can't use them in anywhere else. Can't use them in cathode followers, they'll fail. You can't use the LPS in cathode followers, they'll fail. Chinese tube, you can. The real problem that we're going to have now is there's no more Chinese tubes.
What's going on with the factory? Isn't it like...
I don't know what the latest is. Originally, there was a fire and they were going to have to move, but then the whole virus thing happened, and God knows what's happening now, you know? So I don't know when or if those are coming back, and basically we bought all that we could at the time. So then we're now looking at, well, what do you use now that you don't entirely hate, you know? So for us, I mean, I still use, in my first two stages on, like, say, a B100 Deluxe, I use a JJ just for low microphonics. So I have two other stages that I have to, you know, populate. And I would like to use the same tube and not put yet another brand with another buying thing that we have to do. So there's a new tube from EH that's called the 7025 that they came out with.
Really?
That I tried and I listened to. It's brand new, pretty much, and I liked what I heard. It seemed to sound cool.
Basically, 7025 is old school designation for a low noise, like high end 12AX7, right?
Yeah, and it looks totally different too. So it's not like a rebranded one of the tubes. You know, it doesn't internally. It doesn't look the same. Huh. Might use those.
I gotta try that.
We'll have to see. Well, I'm supposed to get basically a sample batch, and then I'm going to start putting them in amps and see what happens.
It's good to know. I didn't know that tube was out there.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Okay, I gotta try that.
Well, I mean, like, you know, this was a serious. I mean, you know, Sovtek was trying to address this issue for manufacturers and stuff. So, Yeah, it's a major issue. Other than that, I mean, I'm going to have to put JJs across the board, which I don't really want to do.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I got basically everything. I had everything that Sovtech made sent to me. And the thing is, the cathode follower, you have to have the tube work in the cathode follower. So for Sovtech, anything WA, WB, or WC, or whatever it is, those all will work. Not always the best choice. Although what I was just doing was putting it in a separate amp and then comparing it to an amp with the current tube complement, and then using an amp switcher going back and forth. And I'm like, what does it sound like? You know?
Yep. Somebody's saying, what are your thoughts on Russian tubes? That's what we're talking about, like all the Mike Matthews stuff, basically electroharmonics. I mean, for those who don't know, it's all the same. Electroharmonics. I mean, not the same tube, but electroharmonics and Sovtech and Gold Lion and Mullard, and he bought up all these names, but they're all made out of that one reflector plant, right? And one tube factory.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple plants,
yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. What else we got here? Sorry for the lull. I thought that was called an ECC 83 or something. Yeah, 7025, ECC 83, 12AX7, all the same designation. That's all basically 12AX7. You know, they got to have it. If they come up with a new tube, they got to call it something, right? It's like coming out with a new amp. You got to call it something. So if it's like, yeah, let's give them another variant of 12AX7, well, we'll call it something else. 12AX7 SP or something, you know. Okay, what are your thoughts on Scorpion?
There's one from Randy Wilcox, super chat.
Oh, is he? Okay, let's get to that. Somebody was asking what are our thoughts on Scorpion speakers. I remember those as the PV speakers. I don't know. I guess they sounded okay in the PV Bandit in the 90s. Yeah, I don't either. I did have a PV 412 actually, like one of those ones that Morello used. I had one of those for a minute with Scorpions in it. It was okay, I guess. But
they were built like a brick shithouse, you know. They were built well.
Yeah, we had a long talk about PV the other day and about how they were built, like they were the working man's amp. Randy Wilcox is up there in the top chat, and he says, in your chat with Delana the other night, you mentioned in the chat text you would only trust the Ampete switcher and not some of the others that are out there on the market. Can you elaborate? What is it about the Ampete amp switcher makes you trust it?
Well, I know how it's built and I know how it's done, and I know that every amp send to the input of the amp is transformer isolated. You retain the grounds on all your amplifiers and the unit. It works properly, safely, and consistently. So essentially, that's it.
There's a lot at stake.
I mean, you can't,
right?
There's a lot at stake, and you can't ask someone to ground lift their amplifier, to make it work with the switcher and stuff. So, just saying, the way the Ampete's done, it's done properly. I know that's what I use. I know Pete uses it. It's great. It's flawless. It's killer. Awesome.
Can you tell me what's happening exactly when it's switching? Like, is there a small load in there that's protecting the amps when they're not on or something, or not?
Well, generally speaking, most amp switchers shunt the input to ground of the amp, and generally speaking, shunt the output of the amp to ground also. So no signals going into the amp, and for safety reasons, the output is shunted to ground. I know in the Ampete, I'm pretty sure he has a small little load in there. Or he changed that. I don't quite remember on that one, but okay. People, you got to realize that pretty much you can have an amp on a bench with no speaker cable plugged in, the amp being on with no signal going through it, and it's perfectly fine.
Right.
You're not harming the amp in any way.
Just idle noise is not gonna.
Idle noise. It's not. You're not going to harm it. Generally speaking, if you have an amp on a bench like that, you turn the volumes down to nothing too. but you're not going to harm it. It's when a large signal level goes through the amplifier with no load.
Yeah.
That's when, that's why like an old Marshall on 10, and you didn't plug the speaker cable in. Oh, that could be disastrous.
Who did that? Who did that recently and brought you an amp for repair? Can you think of somebody? Might have been me.
No,
I did it.
I never have output. Oh, you did it.
Remember?
Yeah,
and you called me. I was in Hawaii and you called me and you're like, yeah, man, it's messed up. And I was like, no. And you're like, no, it's fine. I fixed it. It was just the tubes. And I was like, you bastard. You had me.
Generally speaking, though, if you do that, the transformer might not blow up. I'm not saying it can't, but it might not blow up. What might happen is the tubes arc, and hopefully the fuse blows before the transformer can.
That's what the fuse is for.
Yeah. Exactly. Don't put larger fuses or foil on your fuses.
I love that when people are like, hey, I keep popping the fuse. Should I put in a bigger fuse? It's like, well, generally speaking, you should probably have your amp looked at because the designer put that size fuse in for a reason, right?
Yeah. Is there a way? And if you're blowing a fuse, it's probably a bad tube.
Right.
Period.
It's like
99% of the time.
It's like, oh, it hurts really bad right here. Should I take 6 ibuprofen every day? No, you should probably go to the doctor and find out what the hell the underlying problem is.
Yeah.
The ibuprofen might be the Band-Aid, but
yeah. And then you're going to have all sorts of other problems from the ibuprofen.
Right. Exactly. Somebody's making a point here that they Mark Nicholas says, I didn't even know about Friedman's masterful amps until I played the Axe effects, put them on the top of my wish list. So that's the thing with modelers, is sometimes they're like the taste test for different amps, and you can try them. And,
absolutely, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, or somebody's like, oh, I didn't know about your amp. I think we found that with the PT, but see, it was great. With the PT 100, it was like the UA plugin has been nothing but win-win. It took a while actually because I'm the one that actually brought it to the company and said, hey, I met Dirk and I knew him for a long time and said, hey, there's this company that's interested in modeling the amp. And they were like, no, we're not really into that right now. Like, okay. And then down the road a little bit, they warmed to the idea. And I think it's been really good, for us, it's not a bad thing. But once again, that was done right, where they got us involved. So it was cool.
Yep.
Just a couple more questions here, random from Yantho. Says, any thoughts on floating bridge versus fixed bridge maintenance? Like what about things like knife edges? You ever find that that's a thing, or after a Floyd's 10 or 15 years old and used?
Yeah, sure. I don't know though. I mean, I've had some old guitars. The Floyd still work perfectly fine from the 80s. So I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if they were made well to begin with, like the old ones were. I don't know. I didn't find too much problem, but I'm not saying that people can't completely. I mean, there's people out there that are very abusive to their guitars as players, and they can wreck things fast.
Yeah.
I mean, Eddie would wreck stuff. I mean,
right.
I mean, he would yank on it and pull the tremolo arms out of things and stuff, and just just crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, people used to abuse.
I think I saw him pull the bridge off a guitar once.
Really? Just yank it,
and just like this fell apart, basically. Well, you've shooken his hand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how does that feel when he shakes your hand?
He doesn't mess around
on your hand. Strong ass hands, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kill something.
John has a question. He's up there in the top chat. He says he played a Jakey Lee head he's got a Jakey Lee head and 412 cab on order. Can he turn the volume down? What's the matter with me? Can you turn the volume all the way up with this setup? If you got a Jakey Lee head and cab, I mean, Jake plays loud, right?
Well, that's how he does it. The plexi, both channels, the volumes are on 10.
Really?
Now the high gain channel, use the lower gain setting on the high gain channel. Don't play the high gain channel on 10, because at some point like heavy distorted on top of power amp distortion just sounds like crap. Use the more 800 setting, and that's how he uses it and cranks it on 10.
Right.
10.
Crazy.
100 watts.
Now, I went to see him with you. We went to see the show. We went to see him with 2 stacks of whiskey, and it sounded great, though. I loved it. I remember standing there talking to you, going, you know what? It's loud, but it's what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, it sounds right.
It sounds right. I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah, it's just like, as soon as he just hits one little cuckoo, you're just like, oh, yeah.
I mean, I remember playing the Viper Room with Sebastian Bach and Steve Stevens, and Steve. I remember I was using a BE head that night, actually, and I had the BE head set on. I mean, it's the Viper Room where normally they won't let you turn up beyond. It's like stupid how quiet you got to play usually, but you go in there with those guys, and because they're rock stars and they don't mess with you, you can do whatever you want. So, Steve just plays. It's 100 watts, making full power. That's the way.
Yeah, his volume knob that night was on 6.
There you go, on 100 watts. So I had to do the same.
And that is full volume, people. I mean, anything past that, you're just distorting the power section. By 6, it's at full volume.
Watch the video of us playing. If you search for Viper Room, Sebastian Bach, Steve Stevens, YouTube, you'll find the video of us playing like Hot for Teacher, right? And you can hear us play that, and you can hear how loud I'm playing. Now, watch it and consider that both of us are using 100-watt amps, basically the equivalent of on 10 in a small club, and listen to Sebastian sing and listen to you can hear everything. Because Sebastian sings, he's a man.
Holy crap, he sings loud. Even like if you don't even mic him, he's like can sing over that stuff almost.
He's got nuts. That's the way he sings, and he doesn't complain about. Can you guys turn down? It's too loud up here. He's just wah!
Yeah,
it is what it is. Yeah, shaking his hair around in the circle, and you're like Jesus. Yeah, it's something else. So
that's a good show.
Can be done. Yeah, that was fun. I remember that night. It was really loud. I remember sitting down because I didn't play on the whole set. I played on some of it. I remember Billy Idol got up and stuff, and I wasn't playing. I was sitting there, and I remember Steve's cabinet was right in front of me, so I had to put earplugs in. It was, I mean, it was closer to me than those Marco cabs are to you right now. Yeah, like right at your level. It was like, all right, I'm definitely not going to be able to hear at all after tonight if I don't protect hearing right now. So,
if we should redo that gig if we can ever, play live again.
I know, right? Yeah, we got to do more of that stuff again.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, that was really fun. Somebody says, I love Sebastian. Seems like he's a fun guy. He's a riot. I mean, I could tell you so many stories about just the I guess I've played 4 or 5 gigs with him, and it's a real riot.
What was Steve Stevens call? Yeah, he's a knucklehead with a smile on his face.
He's exactly what you would expect, I guess. He's living the dream 24/7. He doesn't. It's not an act. Let's see. What else have we got here?
I saw Sebastian Bach play when he was really young, when he played with Vixen.
Vixen? No,
not Vixen. Madam X. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
When he played with Madam X in Detroit at Harpo's.
Oh.
He was like a baby, big teased hair up, and like.
You mean this is pre
19 years old or something?
This is pre Skid Row. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, and
it was super cool.
Ronnie Ward says, why don't tube amp manufacturers build in power amp attenuators?
Oh.
There's a mosquito.
Well.
Damn it.
Are you seeing things, Pete?
No, I can hear it buzzing around.
Seeing phantom things? He's starting to talk to himself. He's been in front of the computer too long, people.
I only have one beverage. By the way, today, folks, it was coffee and a little Glenlivet, and Dave had mimosas because
I still have. I haven't completed mimosa experience yet, but I'm gonna have to pay pretty soon. But
we still got 730 people online, so we're
we keep going then.
I know we will for a little bit here, for sure. Built-in power attenuators. Well, wait. Okay, well, just let's come back to that for a sec, because there's just a top chat, and we will come right back to that before it disappears here. Dave, of all the studio monitors and speakers you've heard, which do you like best? Barefoot, ATC? What do you like for studio monitors? And he also wants to know, do you mod 5150s, or can a modded BE do it?
Can't really mod 5150. It's too hard to do, and depending on if it's PV or Fender, either one's screwed to do. So no.
And what are your favorite studio monitors?
Oh man, you know what? To be honest, I'm a kind of a diehard Yamaha studio monitor fan.
Some of the new ones are really good.
I've had all sorts of different ones. Obviously, I like an old NS10 is amazing with the right power amp. The newer ones are great.
What are the newer ones called? Do we know the model of the?
There's an HS7, which is probably the mid-range, mid-sized one. That's really particularly good.
They sound nice, right?
And they don't cost a fortune.
Right.
They sound good. You hear your music through it, and you're like, "Oh, that's great."
HS7.
And they're also really revealing. They're pretty revealing. So it's. Granted, there's other speakers. There's some Atom speakers that are great and stuff. But to be honest,
that's what I use.
Why? I don't think you really have to spend that much. Look, people mixed for years on NS10s, which were, not necessarily the best sounding speaker.
Not expensive either.
But you learn how to mix on them, and the mixes came out great on them. So really, what translates the best for you? So, if you can work with these Yamahas and the mix translates to other mediums, then you're great.
Looks like you're about $319 a speaker, so about $600 for a pair plus tax, something like that. Yeah, the HS7. I heard them recently, and I thought they were really good too. They're nice. Now I use Atoms, but they're double. They're more than twice the price. They're $750. And then I have Barefoots, which are like $6,000 for but they're more a midfield. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
The Barefoots are big compared to. They're not going to.
Honestly, it depends on what kind of studio stuff you're doing. But I see these speakers everywhere. It's not like.
Yeah.
I think they just work.
Yeah, they just work. They sound good.
Go listen to a bunch of speakers at a store that you can do that at when you can again. And you A/B them all. You go, oh, those, I really like those. Those sound good.
Yeah.
And A/B against much more expensive.
It's interesting. You don't want to get too big either. Like it's like too much speaker for the wrong. Like if you've got a bedroom studio, or you don't have a real big setup, or you're kind of confined close to a wall, the worst thing in the world can be too big speakers. Like if I found even just the Dynaaudios, I've got a pair of Dynaaudios at home, and the company sent me 2 sets to listen to. They sent me BM5s and BM6s, Mark III versions of both. The BM6s are too big. I like the BM5s for what I was doing at the time, and so I've got those at home now, and those are pretty nice speakers. But
I have a set. It's funny. I had bought a set of old Yamaha speakers, MSP5s, that originally I was using for just iTunes and things like that, because it was a cheap set of speakers.
Yeah. And
I found myself, when I'm listening to my iTunes on it and stuff, going, these speakers sound really good. I like these. I think, they sound, the bass translates well, and it's punchy and it's good. And so I started using them for my studio monitors, and in smaller rooms, they're fantastic. And funny thing is, I had done a mix in recent years for Sammy Bowler, and I did a quick mix in a completely untreated studio, at the shop in the corner with this pair of speakers. And the mix translated like a motherfucker to, the car and everything else.
Sure.
And I'm just like going, wow, okay. So now I'm like kind of hooked on just using these.
Hey man, whatever works. Like you say, whatever you get used to, whatever makes sense, you know? I mean, Bob Clearmountain is one of the greatest mixers of all time. He uses NS10s, and he's also got like a bigger Paradigm, remember what, but of, you know, kind of full range. And then he's got the mains in the studio. And then he's got these little Apple computer speakers from like the 90s or 80s that were like little Apple Tower speakers that you would put on either side of your old Apple monitor. And he bought all those up, as many as he could find, because he loves them. And that's what he uses as his kind of like, you know, for the equivalent of a TV or small speaker sort of reference mix. He mixes on those all the time. You know, NS10s, really, it's mainly NS10s and the little computer speakers. That's what he mixes on. So, it, you know, whatever works. Somebody's asking about Genelecs. Genelecs are still cool. I like those. I mean, some of the other monitor brands I really like recently that I tried are Focals. Felt instantly comfortable on Focals, like, and did a couple mixes that worked really well, translated, you know, and they're not overly expensive. They're in the Atom kind of price range, not crazy money. And I also really liked, let me see, Focals. Oh, the Neumann ones. I kind of like those. They're a little smoother, but they're kind of for people that like Dyne Audios. And I thought the Neumanns were pretty cool. They had, I think they've discontinued them now, but they're pretty nice. Genelecs are cool. Whenever I go over to Tim Pierce's place, he's got Genelecs, and he's got a little pair of them that he uses. Like they're real small. They're little like 4-inch drivers, 5-inch, and that's what's facing him because he tries to save his hearing and not have too much volume. And then he's got a bigger set facing the other way, because he's got that 2-way setup at his place for the client and for himself. And he's got the bigger set, the, you know, the more pleasing ones or whatever facing out.
Yeah, Genelecs I like. Sure. I mean, that's good too. I had a set of Genelecs ones. I tried a lot. I had a set of Adams once. I had, you know, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
The thing the Adams that I had, which I think is the same pair you had, the thing I never liked is I found that when I pushed them hard, they're fine at low volumes, but when I pushed them hard, the power amps kind of gave up the ghost to it.
With the Adams in particular? Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody we missed there in the top chat. Lytham St. Anne's Guitar Shop, somewhere in the UK there. He says, great show, chaps. He says he's got a Marshall Bluesbreaker 1962 LE 50th anniversary hand-wired and would like to insert an effects send return for his H9 and attenuator. What would you recommend? That's an interesting question, because we were just talking about this week about effects loops. Yeah, kind of not, right?
I mean, are you using the amp cranked up, or are you using it clean? If you're using it clean, you just don't need the effects loop. If you're using it cranked up, the effects loop won't work because the power section starts to distort, and then it just distorts the effect that you put in there, and it doesn't sound good. So, I mean, ideally, if you want to use an amp like that cranked up, you should take a line out and feed an effect and feed another cab with a power amp of some sort. And then that would give you your wet, you know, that would give you that thing without screwing up the effects.
I would recommend that he get a power station from Friet, and the money you would spend on a mod for an effects loop on that amp, sell your attenuator, whatever you've got, and get a Friet, and you know the money you'll get back from your attenuator plus the money you would have spent on an effects loop modding the amp, which is a nice hand-wired Marshall that you probably want to keep original because it's probably got some collectability. Just spend it on the Friet power station, and then simply run the power station, run the speaker cable, you know, out of the power station back into your Marshall speakers, and you can have what you want at any volume. I mean, you're going to be able to turn up that Bluesbreaker at home and get a killer crank tone, plus add your H9 in the effect loop of the Friet, and you'll get a much better sound than you would.
The new Friet 100-watt power station just sounds incredible.
Yeah, really good. So,
I mean, like Pete and I were just like, God damn you.
Voice really well.
Yeah, just it was really good. Really good.
Do you know what I mean? Whatever you're using for an attenuator and the money, the $200 to $300 or whatever you would spend on an effects loop mod, sell your attenuator, get a couple $100 for that, spend the extra $200 or $300, $400 or whatever on the Friet, whatever it costs, and now you've got your Bluesbreaker at any volume with the H9 in the effect loop.
Works killer.
You got a great setup, and you've kept your amp original.
Right back there. I can't right back there somewhere.
You've got an original one there, right?
Yeah, the original one. Yep.
I got to get the new one. It's gotta happen.
Let me
You got to split?
you answer some questions. No, I don't have to split. I just have to split for a second.
Okay.
Restroom calls.
Restroom call? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, hang on.
I'll grab I do understand. Moss valve opinions, says Christopher. I know Dave likes them, and I like them too back in the day. Something about the Moss valve amps, they were really terrific. I mean, for the for a good option for like a wet dry wet rig, or I mean a lot of people use those Moss valves. Just a really good sounding. SD Design says Sunday Live is bloody brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate it. I do. I wish the Moss valves were still made. They were really good. I guess the closest current thing is probably something like a Matrix, but I don't know how close they are. Dave would probably say that if he comes back from the bathroom, we'll ask. But I don't think they're that close. But reasonably high power, solid state option. The matrices are pretty cool. They're really light. I've got a 3-channel matrix that's 1,000 watts each channel or something. I mean, the thing weighs like 10 pounds. Yeah. Is Tim Pierce's jam room in his living room, says my knees hurt. It's more like a bedroom, actually. That he's built into being his room, and then the cabs are down in his he's got an amazing setup. I mean, it's like really great because he's got windows on a couple walls, and it's very bright and nice in there. All his guitars all the way around. There's lots of space in that room. And then he's got the lines running all the way down to his garage where he's built the cab ISO closet and stuff. And it's amazing, lives in a great neighborhood, and he's got a great scene going. Somebody was asking about Moss valve amps. Our thoughts on those? I said you would say you like them. I think
those are great.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Those are really good for wet, dry, wet stuff, and can't really find them though anymore.
Yeah, not around. I mean, why don't what's that company come back? How close is a Matrix? Probably not, right? Not a MOSFET design, right?
I mean, Matrix is fantastic. I mean, is it? It's different. I like the MOSFET because it had a presence pot on it,
Right. Yeah.
I always sort of wish it had a depth pot on it.
There's a mosquito in here.
So, see now I'm more washed out than you are now. See, because the light is coming in these windows off to the side.
Changing. No, it looks good. I'm always impressed with the video quality of this whole StreamYard situation. It's pretty damn good. It's better than the old.
Yeah, it's actually better than what we use on Tone Talk.
Yeah, it's pretty rocking.
I want to change over.
Let's give Ben Coombs props because Ben's the one that taught me about this, and he's my faithful moderator. And he showed me the light.
Ben, because now I might be doing it.
But you can do all kinds of cool stuff.
And if you got any of you guys in the chat don't know about Tone Talk, you should, and please come over and subscribe if you can, or come watch our shows also.
Yeah, Fridays usually you do Tone Talk, right? Usually, right?
Most of the time we do it Friday evenings. Although sometimes I wonder if it would be better off on a weekend day or something. But
maybe Saturday morning or something. Could be good. Don't do it Sunday. Maybe. Don't do it Sunday.
We'll be like, which one do I go to?
Not good for me or for you.
Yeah, I won't do it Sunday. I promise.
We like Fridays is cool. Friday evening, I always like the Tone Talk's kind of like a nice early Friday evening thing too. But a weekend could be good too, I guess. Somebody wants to know what's the first amp you tricked out, like I guess modded. Do you remember?
Oh, God, no.
Probably a Marshall of some sort, right?
I have no idea. I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, I was fiddling with stuff when I was a kid a little bit.
I mean, your story about in the Jose video, but you took an amp to Jose, and yet you had the mind of a tinkerer. So you were probably like, "What did he do in here?" Right? Like, I bet. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, really, my amp education kind of happened right after that, or during that time. That's when I got involved with Bruce Egnator, and that's when he was the mentor to me, so to speak, and so that's when that really started happening.
Bruce taught you some of the the ropes.
Well, yeah. Well, we started messing around with Attenuator amps, and improving. Like I was involved in the first 4-channel preamp, which was a great.
The IE4.
Great preamp, and still the 4 channels, still like to this day, to me, like it's like, wow, that's great. So you had your clean Fender, you had your broken up like super reverby kind of thing, cranked up Fendery thing. Then you had your crunchy thing, and then the lead thing.
Yeah.
Those 2 more Marshall, the other 2 more Fender. The concept, that was my concept at the time. Because what was going on a lot in LA at the time was, it was like there was the clean Fendery thing, and then there was the cranked up, super reverb deluxe sort of thing. And then there was like the Marshall-y thing, and then the higher gain,
Yep.
And that just really, and for a studio player, I mean, those are like all the sounds you'd use.
Sure.
These like very useful,
What year did that preamp come out? The IE4?
Must have been 1990 or something.
Wow. Yeah, crazy.
90, 91, something like that.
I
have one in the shop.
Yeah, I've seen it around your place. Vincent's up there in
Super
the top.
Cool. I'd like to do something like that.
A preamp like that. That would be cool.
Yeah, I almost think that maybe it would be something that could be a cool thing these days, maybe with built-in IRs and stuff.
Oh, definitely. I mean, people are pretty much wide open to trying different things these days, I think, right?
Yeah. 4 channels, 4 complete channels and built-in IRs. I think that'd be cool.
Vincent's up there in the top chat, and he says, greetings from Quarantine East. And what are your favorite ways to use an H9? Oh, he's asking me favorite ways to use an H9. And how would you use it with other effects like Strymon and stuff? And Dave, thanks for your help with the amp, Pete. I guess you helped them out with his switcher. Vincent's a good dude. I use the H9 for a couple specific things. I use it. I like the delays on it a lot. Some of the Eventide, because it's basically the same delays that were in their delay pedal that came out a few years before that. Whatever that thing was called, the Time Factor, I think. And like the Vintage Digital is a really good sounding delay, and some of that like analog-y kind of sound. So sometimes I'll use it because it's got a real vibe to it that sounds really good. So, but mainly I'm using it for reverb. The H9, I like the spring in it, and the kind of the spring, the plate, the hall, and the black hole algorithm is amazing for ambient stuff. Really great if you're doing any of that kind of trippy ambient kind of thing. So I'll use one H9 for reverb mainly. The middle one on my board is for that. The other one is delay and occasional rotary, because the rotary in the H9 is great. Like the best thing on my board that does rotary for sure. Really, really, really good rotary simulator. And I think those are the main 2 things I use in it. I don't really use it for, pitch. If you want to do like a H3000 kind of thing, it does a decent, like Dave was saying earlier, he really likes the original H3000, but it does a pretty good detune kind of thing.
Well, what I was saying with that is like, the funny thing is, you think certain things do good pitches and stuff, and then if you ever have something that comes across your plate again with the original H3000 or something, you're just like, oh my God, what was no, this sure doesn't do a good pitch. There's just something sort of magical about that box. That had this tonality to it. That was just like, oh yeah.
It's like all the Benson Sims, and then you try a real Benson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you can sit there. There's this thing that happens where you turn it on, and you're like, it's kind of like my tri-chorus. I've got tri-chorus Sims, but I've got a real, the full tone recreation of the tri-chorus here. And you turn it on. I used it in a video recently, and people were like, "What is that sound? That sounds awesome!" And it's that original tri-chorus thing. It just has a sound. It's hard to describe but like you say, PCM 42 or these boxes, they had a certain. You plug into it and you don't want to turn it. It's like an Echoplex, you turn it on, you go, oh God, that sounds so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel fortunate to have been working in an era that had all these great boxes and that we used them regularly.
Sure.
Again, it's sort of, I brought it up before. I mean, building rigs since, 1990 or something, it's like I've seen everything over the years. And I think a lot of our, even though technology has advanced, the tone and the audio portion of it hasn't. So you have these new things that are very technologically advanced. You can do a million things, but the actual tone of the unit just kind of is Yeah. And when you listen to that old stuff, you're just like, oh God, it's good. You just want to play it forever. You put on, if I brought a PCM 42 into your room and you put it in the loop of your amp, you'd be sitting there just forever, just playing it because you're just like, oh my God, this sounds good.
Yeah, the audio was just special. So.
But in a lot of those old pieces, I mean, it was all about the audio signal path and everything else. They had crappy A to D converters and D to A converters, but it didn't matter because their audio was so pristine. The signal path. It's all full size parts too, not surface mount components, and just better in general.
A to D and D to A, it's a funny thing because it's like it matters, but I don't know how much it matters on a guitar amp signal, which is basically between 100 hertz and 5K. It's like, did it really, okay, when you hear it on a whole mix, an A to D converter, like the original crappy A to D converters that were in ADATs or something or whatever, when you hear it on cymbals and stuff, it's like, but if you take it and just listen to a guitar sound, I don't know that, you know what I mean? So the old A to Ds and stuff.
Yeah.
Does it really matter? Maybe it's all the other stuff built around it that,
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how those processes were. I mean, they're like 8-bit A to D converters and stuff. It's like, great, but all the audio path around it was rich and robust and awesome.
Yeah.
And so, plug in a PCM 70 and you're just like, oh man, yeah. And you plug in something new that supposedly does that same thing, and you listen to it, and you're just like, yeah, no, it's not. It's cool, not as good. No way.
Yeah, it's just less. We got to go for some degree of convenience now. On pedal, I can move my pedal board myself. Yeah. And I can fly it in a case that an airline will still take, it's not realistic for me many times. When I went to do my gig recently overseas, the band ain't going to pay necessarily to fly a rack these days and stuff. It's just not reality anymore. Not even Metallica does it, So it's like when they realize that, hey, we can make just as much money, but spend X amount less on, so that, not having, like somebody was saying, a lot of the big bands still use racks. Somebody said in the chat, like Def Leppard, and sure they do, but they're also old school acts from the 80s that they got a certain way they did things. And a lot of those bands don't, like Metallica, for instance. So it's like, if you're Van Halen or if you're whatever, it's like, it ain't a reality for most modern, flying around. You see what Dweezil Zappa did when he downsized and, had refrigerator racks and stuff, and then went to the Axe effects. It's like, this is the reality. So for many of us these days, it's a pedal board and an amp. I mean, just having a PT15 and a pedal board, I'm happy. I'm lucky. I feel like, hey, I've got a really good amp.
But there are a bunch of pedals that have that kind of gushy factor, and you just have to, source them out, so to speak. I mean, like the difference between, say, a Digitech Polara reverb and a TC Hall of Fame reverb. Oh my God, it's like freaking night and day different. The Polara by far just kills it.
You like the Polara, or the DD500 doing
the Polara
3000.
DD500 in the STE 3000 mode. I mean, I compared it directly to an STE 3000. It's damn close. Yeah. Damn close. And I'm a big fan of that pedal. I did a rig recently for someone that had, I think you saw it when it was in there. it had 3 of the Boss things in it. It had the chorus, the MD500, the RV500, and the DD500. So the RV stuff was in a like post wet, dry, wet kind of thing. And all of those have analog drive paths, which is something else I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to then get into this mixer thing with any of it. It's easy to use, and if you want dry in your wet cabs, you can have it, and it's not out of phase, and it's not screwed up. And then I put the MD and mono in front of the amp, which is the modulation. And I swear to God, I mean, like, we sat there, because I hadn't really played with that in depth. We just sit there and listen to everything that was in it. And we're like, well, that's good. Wow, that's cool. Oh, the Unifive sounds good. Oh, the rotary sounds cool. Oh, the CE1 chorus, that sounds good. That pretty much mimicked it well. Oh, this did it well. Everything around the dial that you listened to was like, well, that's great.
Yeah, Boss is kind of killing it these days.
And it was basically like the thing was Boss, because it just works.
Yeah, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Somebody was up in the top chat up there, and they were asking about our opinion on something like the Mike Nomo or the Ace from Sir analog cab sims versus IRs and stuff. Do we still like the sound, and how does that kind of fit into the overall? Like, in my opinion, the analog case, something like the Ace, it's simple and there's no latency. So if you're the type of guitar player that wants to plug in, like Doug Aldrich really likes the Ace. I know, thinks it sounds great. It's simple. You plug it in. You know, he just wants to get to playing. Probably it's got a few knobs on it. That's it. There's an immediacy to those analog cab sims, I think. You know, that is just a simple thing to use. Whereas with IRs, I think with IRs it's a fine line, because I think Sir struck a wonderful balance with the reactive load IR, because it's simple, almost by their technical limitations, not having a software staff, you know, of people that would design, oh, let's make it do this and this and this. It's like, no. We can do 16 IRs and you can change them if you want, but that's it. And that limitation, and then limiting the cost, because there wasn't all this R&D put into software and all this, almost makes it a nice gap, bridging between the analog world and the digital world. Because a lot of the digital things, they do 40 million things, but it's like you got this learning curve to get into and stuff. You know, what's your feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, so that turns me off sometimes. Like, if it takes me too long to do it, I don't want to do it. You know, it's just I just want to plug in a box and click, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been programming stuff all my life and stuff. Some stuff is super easy to program. Some stuff is like not. Some stuff is highly horrible to program. Yeah, I mean, I loved, for instance, the Blue box from Thomas Blue.
Yeah.
Luke. And you use it too.
Yeah, I got it right here. It is good.
It's an IR box. Here you go. You got an IR box. You plug into it and twist the knob till you get a sound you like. And then you have a mic position thing for brighter or a little darker, you know?
And that's it.
To fine tune it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And there are several of his IRs that are in that box that sound great.
You could make a whole record with this thing, no problem. You know?
Yeah. So you have a load, you just plug into that and plug it into your thing, and you're done. Great.
Yeah. And that's just, it's kind of the Sir reactive load. I mean, it's not really that different. It's just IRs in it, except you can change the IRs on a reactive load. But I bet a lot of people don't. They probably just use it with the ones that came.
Yeah, I think the minute that it gets complicated to change the IRs and stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, no, I'll just use this one.
It's like anything.
I was just like the same way with Sammy Bowler, who's one of our artists and friends. He's just like, yeah, I use the Tunehouse Live. I've had it forever, and I use it on one patch.
Yeah.
For everything. He goes, and how I found that is I just thumbed through their presets and their stuff until I found one I liked, and I just left it there and used it ever since.
Well, how many different cab sounds do you really like? You know, what's your favorite speaker? It's like, well, I like a 412 with greenbacks, and sometimes I mess around with this. It's like with me, I like a 412 with greenbacks, or I like a box cab with blues. I like a couple other things.
That's it.
410 basement's pretty cool for like clean things. Occasionally I mess with V30s because if I want a more modern grindy thing,
Yeah.
kind of it. It's like, you know, H75s are cool, but you know, truth be told, if it's like clean sounds, I'll do one or two things. If it's dirty sounds, I'll do one or two things. That's it. So how many IRs do I really need? Like, or different, you know, it's just being a rabbit hole. But this goes for, okay. So like I'm doing a video right now for
the thing is, it'll drive you insane.
Yeah.
You know, you will sit there and obsess over which IR is the best and which is this and which is that. And instead of playing the damn guitar.
Yeah. So, I'm doing a video right now for something that is great and it sounds really good. I won't name what it is, but it's like the designer. I mean, you can tell people many times, designers, they put a lot of years or months or / years into the design of a product, and they like, oh, what if it could do this? What if it could do this? What if it could do this? Let's make it do this, and oh, I can add this feature. And then you get the manual and you read it, and so then they send it to you to do a demo, and it's like looking at 10 years of someone's designer life in the product, you know. And you're like, oh my God, like I get what this person was trying to do, but now I've got to absorb all this and try and show all this stuff off. And how do you do it again? And in mini pedals, they're trying to make it as small as possible and then do 100 different things. And so it's like double tap this button to get to this parameter, double tap this button to do this, but a single tap will do this. Now, if you hold this down while you turn this, you'll get to this feature. And it's like, whoop, I just whacked my microphone. But that was out of frustration because that is it's just like, oh God, dude, like I just want to play, you know, I just want to play. So striking that balance is, you know what I mean? It's like, I know, you know what I'm talking about because
yeah, I mean, like we do rigs for people and like when it comes down to the end and we're programming, nothing we hate more than like having to deal with, well, for instance, Eventide H9s. Great product, cool pedal, fantastic. Completely frustrating to have to do anything on. Like you have to have the app, you know, you have to have it synced to your phone or whatever, really, to program anything on it. You can do it from the knob, sort of, but you're gonna have to look it up every time you do it because you can't remember for the life of you how to do it.
Yeah, like so how do you get to this parameter?
Channel. Oh, okay. Well, I hold this switch down like this while standing on my head while I twist the knob.
It's a testament to how good. It's a testament to how good it sounds that so many people use them because it is. I would 100% agree. It's a pain in the ass. It's so small and great and sounds great, but Jesus, like to have to dig through the manual and also just to have to Bluetooth my phone and many times. So then, oh God, so you got to, okay, now your phone's dead. So you can't even do the thing you need to do. So now you got to charge your phone. So you charge your phone and then your phone turns on. You go to Bluetooth, you find because I have two H9, so I got to Bluetooth the right one. And then, you know, do that. And then many times I'll then go to the app and I'll say, do you want to update? Because, you know, and it's like, or it's like this app, you need to update because the app is out of date or your H9 is out of date with the version of the app you have. So you need to update your H9 and you're like, oh God. So then you do that. So now maybe you're 10 minutes later because you wanted to get more feedback on your delay. And you finally get to the page and then it's really cool. The app is really cool. Once you get to that point, it's great. It's a little confusing still. Like I still don't quite understand mapping and how to save presets to the unit or on the thing. And I've been using them for like 10 years.
Oh, well then not only the H9, then we start talking about like the Line 6 HX effects or the little Helix Stomp or who that has a whole yet another cryptic architecture on how to do that you need to learn.
I'm dialed.
It is easier.
I got it.
You got it dialed in now. But at first you're like scratching your head going, how do you do this?
There's a few things that was like, and it was silly
because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me because the way they went about the architecture of it is not. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. You got frustrated with something that I helped you with. I remember recently.
Stuff because to me that makes sense. Because coming from the era that I was coming from, that's how stuff programmed.
Right.
It's simple. So on the boss, you could have the boss sitting in front of you and go, okay, edit. Oh, parameter list. Okay. Slide down the list. Oh, delay time. Okay, boom. Oh, this. Oh, that. How do I write? Oh, yeah. Hold these 2 buttons. Okay, it's written. Done.
True. Yeah.
Without ever looking at the manual.
Yeah, it was just easier.
Without looking at the manual, and then the Strymon stuff's really easy too, unless you're doing secondary functions. Which then that's a little bit like press this while standing on your head while turning this knob and.
Yeah, like programming the expression pedal on a Strymon is the only.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating there too. So
it's a little, but other than that, the Strymon's great actually. Like because they did, it's a really good, nice balance. It's the closest one to perfect, I think. The Mobius, the Timeline, and the Big Sky and all that. Let's we probably split. What's that?
I like the Flint a lot.
Oh, the Flint's great.
The Trem with the verb. It's because it's simple though. It's simple. It's just
it's great.
Sounds great.
Strymon's a good company. We got to give them props. They're a good company. So I'll take a couple more questions here, and then we're going to split because it's like we've been going 2.5 hours, which is awesome. Let me see here. Getting down into the bottom of the chat. We'll take just a few more, and then we will split. Question for Dave. For a low-volume Van Halen 2 type tone, is it better to cascade the preamp and use the pre-phase inverter master, or can I work the shit, of course the chat just jumped while I was answering.
I got it here.
Yeah.
There. Oh wait, it just jumped. Oh wait, there it is.
Can I work the loss of negative feedback? And it's kind of a specific question.
I don't like here, Fred, I don't like post phase inverter masters, generally speaking. If you really want to do that and you have a plexi type amp, buy the Friedman Power Station 100. I mean, you can dime your amp or however you want to do it. And I mean, if you're trying to use a stock amp, I mean, if you're saying the reason I chose in my amps to do cascaded front ends with a regular master volume, like an 800 style master volume, is just simply it works better. I hate the fact that the negative feedback part leaves when you're adjusting a post-phase master.
When you turn down a post-phase master, the negative feedback gets less.
It doesn't work anymore. Yeah, it gets brighter and stuff. And it, it can work to a certain extent, and it can be okay, but you can't, if you have an amp like that, you can't put a loop in it.
Right.
You can't do any of this stuff. So cascading gain stages, mimicking that tone, is what I chose to do, and it works better that way.
The Jose
if you want to use an old amp and completely plexi style, cranked on 10 kind of thing, again, used by the Friedman Power Station, the 100 watt one, the new one, and it's simply amazing. You can insert your effects, and it's great, killer.
All right. Good. That's good. Somebody's asking best reverb not so complicated over and over and over again. Rekar, what's the best reverb not so complicated? Dave will probably say the Polaris, right?
Yeah, the Polara is really nice because it's got lexicon algorithms. It depends on what you want to do with your reverb. Now, if you're looking for a reverb for like shimmer or something fancy like that, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I mean, I also like the Strymon Flint. Like I said, that's a good got a good reverb in it. I really love the plate though, and the way the stuff in the Polara trails off. Also, there was a reverb for a while, an older one called a Hardwire. Same company, Digitech Hardwire, They had that was a great reverb. Again, that was all lexicon algorithms and that stuff. So
Right.
that's why I tend to like those.
Somebody's asking about the Immerse SD design. That's another good one.
Immerse is great. Yeah,
Univer, good stuff.
Immerse and the from New Neighbor there, all their reverbs are pretty cool.
What about I wish Nuneber would do a programmable unit. Like I wish they would come out with a Strymon or something, because man, their pitch effect is like, and their delays are good.
Yeah, good stuff. They're really good stuff.
Nice pedals, man. If they should branch out a little past the super high powerhouse in a small pedal format, I think, and do something a little bigger. Because it's good stuff. It's really good. Nuneber, big.
I agree. They have great verbs. The original one that they came out with, a wet, that was a great reverb.
Really good. Yeah. Braxall's asking, is it true you can blow up your old Marshall 50 watt with a 2 notes captor?
No.
Not a 50, right? It's good load, right? For 50.
Wait, you can blow up your captor or the amp?
The amp.
No, I mean it's a no.
It's a decent load, but if your amp was probably what happens is people's amps are going to blow up. Like, yeah, if you're going to plug it into a speaker and play loud, it would have blown up anyway, right?
Yes, and chances are you weren't running it that same way.
100 watt.
100 watt into the captor. It says it will do it, but
it's all about the amount of resistors in there, right?
I don't think it really will. So 50 watt, I think, is fine into the captor. It's actually a pretty good sounding load. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And I played a lot with that in recent times. So.
High K says, what Zeptune or Jimmy Page sound is your favorite? That's a good question.
Ooh.
Like when you think of a Zeppelin Jimmy Page sound.
A lot of them.
That whole How the West was one that was mixed by Caveman Shirley. It's pretty great sounding, but that's 3 different shows, right? But he did such a good job on the mix.
London song. London song. I remember a friend of mine who's no longer with us used to play that song live, and it was amazing. Kenny,
yeah, killed
that song live. But a lot of them, Heartbreaker and Jesus, that's amazing. Amazing acoustic work too on those records.
10 Years Gone for me. I love that.
Yeah, that's killer.
So cool.
Man, all
of them. Okay, just a couple more. What about the Jose load box? Somebody's asking. Did Jose ever make a load box?
It's just a load resistor.
So fixed.
Fixed
30.
Load resistor.
30 ohm or no?
Yeah, I think it was a higher value. So you're generally speaking, when you're running, if you have a fixed load resistor and you're running your Marshall, it's better if it's almost double the load you have your Marshall set for. So roughly, if you're running your Marshall at 8, you run your Marshall at 8 ohms and use like a 16 ohm resistor or even 20 ohm resistor. That would be better. Although it's still like a little compressed and a little mid-focused. But that works depending on what power amp you're putting it into also. So you can kind of compensate for that depending on what it's going into. There's no magic between the Jose load box. It was a resistor, and they had a little transformer on it that would kind of what it was like it was a little TV output transformer, and it was just an impedance conversion sort of, and a pot. It wasn't really anything special. I have one. The line out box actually.
Okay.
And it sounds good. I think I did it for you before. So there's nothing real special about it,
Okay. Somebody there is asking, will Friedman Power Grid 10 damage my Access GRX4? And he says, I don't like switching power. So will that work?
Why don't you like switching power? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. I don't know.
I mean, switching power supplies are the future. I mean, that's what they work great. There's no field hum. There's no nothing from them. So the Strymon, the Chalk's Future Power Series, ours. There's a new Voodoo Lab one. They're all switching power, and they're perfectly fine. I've used switching power supplies in rigs for 10 years. I used to use G-Lab ones all the time, flawlessly with all that stuff. So,
were G-Lab switching power or no?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I had, right?
Yeah. Worked forever.
Really good. I had like 3 of them or something. They're great. Wound String is asking Steve Stevens' main plexi amp, Henry Yee mods. So that's a question. Did Dave make notes for any of Steve's main plexi amp?
They were just stock plexis. It was not really modded in any way other than I think there were some ceramic tube sockets installed or kind of bulletproofing kind of modifications and stuff. There wasn't anything modded about it.
Nothing major.
No.
Which one of your 20 waters is most like a Phil X signature amp?
Oh,
the little guys. Pink Taco?
I mean, Pink Taco might be a little softer than Phil's is. Pink Taco has a cool bounciness, but it's darker than Phil's. So I wouldn't. I can change it so it's not, but it has this kind of gushy feeling singing thing, and really cool. But it's definitely on the darker side. I don't know, maybe even the Runt 20, possibly, or the JJ on the BE channel, JJ Junior. Probably JJ Junior on the BE channel might be the closest.
Katiana wants to know, what's your take on 6v6 versus EL84s, and what do you think of 6L6s?
Wait, so EL84s versus 6v6s. I'm personally not. I don't. If you're trying to mimic more of an EL34 sound, 6v6s don't really do it for me. That said, there's lots of ways you can Mickey Mouse stuff to make it sound similar. So 6v6 isn't my first choice, and there's so few 6v6s.
I like them.
I know. There's so few 6v6s that are available. I'd be a little scared.
Well, the JJ's great, though.
The JJ's great, but we'll see how long.
Right. They could go away, and then...
Yeah, it could go away, and then you got a problem.
But that's like everything.
Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, they can be cool. Our EL84 power sections sound big. Most people, characterize EL84 power section as a Vox, which to them sound mid-rangey and stuff. Well, that's not necessarily the case with our amps. And I've proven that over and over and over again at NAMM shows with, switching with amp switchers with the bigger amps. And it's just like, yeah, no, that sounds the same. You don't have the same headroom, but it sounds the same, So you can't characterize a tube. A lot of people characterize tube with a sound of an amp that exists, which isn't necessarily the way you characterize the sound of a tube.
Right.
And then what? Six. What was the second part?
You were just like, do you like 6L6s? What's your take on them?
Yeah, 6L6 is.
I mean, you use them in the dirty.
I find EL34 compared to a 6L6. It's funny. Some people say that 6L6 is sparklier. I actually, at least in some of our amps, EL34 is actually a bit more mid-scooped and a little softer sounding, and more of a presence, like a high presence on the top end, where a 6L6 might seem brighter, but it's just where the frequency of the highs are. It's not quite as high. And generally speaking, the 606 is a little less compressed and a little less scooped.
All right.
So,
well, I hope I got everybody's questions that were up there in the top chat at Jason Hobbs. I hope I got everything that you were asking about. And all you folks, thanks for doing the super chat and everything. And I hope I got to, some folks in the regular chat. I don't know. It's hard because we're trying to go fast, but also you want to give a good answer to questions, right? So we should split, but we should do this again, man. This was fun.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Good times. Everybody check out Dave's show, of course, Tone Talk. You guys all know, I'm sure most of you out there, but if you don't, Dave's got his great Tone Talk show. Many of them.
Talk.com. Please go and subscribe. Come visit our shows. We have all sorts of people on all the time, other amp designers and everything, and we'd love to have you there. So
great. Yes. Go watch the Jakey Lee one right now if you haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a long one. And you will watch the
sorry, I had you.
The complete abomination of a show. No,
it's very real. I love it.
It's very real. It's very cool. And for the first 2 hours, we're pretty good until we finish the whiskey. And by that time, it's starting to downgrade a bit in the content.
You did a whiskey self-intervention after that. It was like you didn't want to see a bottle of whiskey.
I didn't actually drink any scotch for almost, about 6 months.
Literally.
Because at the end of that episode, we went out to dinner.
And it continued.
At a steak restaurant. And of course, here's where the big problem was.
Okay, so wait, watch the end of the episode if anybody.
Watch the end of the episode, but let me just
consider that they went out for dinner.
Consider that we went out for dinner at this steak restaurant, and so Jake is a regular there, and he orders some drink, and I was like blotto, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I'll just have whatever he's having. I'm sure it was good. He has generally good taste in liquor, so I'm sure it was going to be good. Yeah, so it was an absinthe cocktail. Absinthe cocktail on top of a bottle of scotch that we drank. So and that was 2 or maybe possibly 3 of those at dinner. So
I'm gonna be thinking about
it. Didn't turn out well for me later. So
that's crazy.
But it was fun. He's a good guy. And it was super fun chatting with him, and it was awesome. And the funniest part of that whole show, which you guys have to watch, is when he goes, "Did I ever tell you about the time when Mick Mars called me a slant-eyed Japanese bastard?" And I just went, "He said what?"
That started controversy. No. That started a lot of controversy. Oh God!
Yes, yeah. That show went to a bunch of news networks and everything all over the place. So it was good. A lot of views on that one.
I like Jake.
A lot of views. He's fun to hang out with, man.
Yeah,
he's super fun and unfiltered.
Good sense of humor. Oh man. Okay. Well, we should split. Somebody was asking about how to run a DD500 with a Dirty Shirley. I would say right into the front end and enjoy.
No, Dirty Shirley, put in the loop.
Oh, it's got a loop too, right?
DD500, yeah, put in the loop.
Depends on what you're doing. If anything up to moderately crunchy, run it in the front.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it just depends. I mean, it also depends on what kind of delay sound you want. Do you want kind of an edge kind of thing? Then that's probably in front of the amp. Do you want a post, juicy delay thing? That's probably in the loop. Just
one last aside out there. I mean, for most people, if I'm doing a delay demo, like a video here, generally speaking, if I'm trying to show off the tone of the delay, many times the songs you'll notice that I do will start with a cleaner sound. And I'll really try and play something that's got space and you can hear the tone of the delay repeats. And when I'm doing that, it's generally in front. Now, I might be using a real amp, but many times what I like to do, especially if it's a stereo delay, is use a plug-in, because what you can do is plug the guitar right into the delay and then split into 2 channels of like my Apollo interface, input 1 and 2, and then on channels 1 and 2 in Apollo console, I'll pull up amp models and then I'll hard pan them. And you get this massive sound with the, really pristine, clean, with the delay clearly bouncing around in stereo. And I will many times use the Dirty Shirley actually for that, because it's got a great clean sound. I'll either use my PT100 plugin on the clean channel, or I'll use the Dirty Shirley plugin. And the Dirty Shirley, if you haven't tried it, if you got the UA version, and the real amp responds the same, put all the tone controls on 5, crank the master on 10, and put the gain on 2. And it's a wonderful clean sound. It's really, really great. Just full, everything's there. You might turn the presence up to 6 and the treble up to 6 or something, but that's about it. And it's great. So it's like having 2 Dirty Shirleys in stereo, hard panned. And I always get comments on that sound. People will always be like, what amp did you use on this? It sounds awesome. It's like it's a plug-in, and it's the same plug-in copied on. I'll literally copy the exact same settings on each side and then hard pan them, run the delay right into them. So that's a little trick. But I've tried it on the real amp, and it sounds great that way. So running the thing about running delay in front of an amp, or any effects really, if the amp's clean, it can sound really juicy, because all it does, the preamp just compresses the effect a little bit. You get a beautiful thing, which is the edge really. Running an amp slightly edgy, right? And then running a delay into the front, and the way the delay bounces, it's got an organic compressed quality to it that's really special. So it's when we get into heavier rock sounds that then you got to use the loop and stuff. Anyway, let's split. Dave, I can't thank you enough, and we'll see you. Yeah. You guys have a great week. I'll see you next time, and we'll do this again, Dave. And I want to come on Tone Talk again. So
yeah, sure, absolutely, we'll do it.
I'll be back. Thanks,
awesome,
Ben.
guys. All right, see you.
Okay, see you guys. Take care.